You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 460, our breakdown of episode 11 of the Andor series, Daughter of Ferrix, as the title would be. And, man, the penultimate episode that we were anticipating. We've talked a lot about it. And we'll get into our thoughts here in just a little bit. But out of the gate, I would say pretty good episode. I enjoyed it. Still not, maybe not in the top 5 episodes of the series so far, but I think it did what it had to do, which is kind of set the stage for what we all knew was coming. And certainly we've talked about quite a bit here with this series, especially in this last episode, that all roads lead to Ferrix. And all roads lead to the man that's with us here tonight, sporting your episode 9 hat. Very, very cool.
I am. Yeah.
Well,
in my Galaxy's Edge shirt. So.
Is not, I couldn't tell what that. Oh, yeah. You've had that on before.
Yeah, I've worn it before. Lighting's a little bit different here.
Yeah.
But, and you can't see it because the green screen keeps getting screwed up. But anyway, yeah.
Jonesy's
how are you
with
doing?
us.
I am with you. How are you tonight?
I'm good, Jonesy. How are you doing?
I'm shocked to be here, I guess, as usual.
Well, that's okay.
No, I'm not shocked. I'm always here.
Yeah, no, wow. I don't know I want to get into the episode here. Before we do, let's get some news out of the way, because there's quite a bit to talk about here. And okay. we're gonna table some of the more Star Wars related news here for our Patreon show that we've got coming up this weekend. But
the more Star Wars news. What news are we going to share then?
The Jeditorials.
Oh, Cantina Cast news. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But why don't you spoil that? Because we talked about it on the Patreon episode here just a couple of days ago. But officially, this is our first big announcement here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, first main show since we've done it. So yeah, we launched Jeditorials on the website, cantinacast.com/Jeditorials, and it's really cool. It's actually Albert's idea of inviting others as well as Albert and myself and posting articles on the Cantina Cast website that are more editorial and more, opinion type based, and then things that matter to us, a little more personal, I guess. You get to know all of the folks around us. And way back in the day, the Cantina Cast website had a lot of this activity on there. So we're kind of bringing back the past a little bit. And we've had a really cool set of alumni come through Cantina Cast. So it's really cool to kind of renew that tradition and bring that back. And it's pretty exciting. And one of our very own is the first one to launch that. And that's Lauren Stringer. Of course, she's a Patreon member as well. And she wrote a nice article about in support of Jar Jar Binks. So it's a really good article, and invite everyone to go check it out over at cantinacast.com/Jeditorials. Or just go to cantinacast.com, and everybody spells Jeditorials apparently. That's not a knock, but it's a hard word, and I say it really fast. So you're on mute, man.
It's like editorials, but
right.
It's Jeditorials. Jeditorials.
That's right. Yeah.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
Pretty clever.
It's really cool. I mean, it's fun to bring that back and do a little bit more on the website. We're hopefully trying to do this about every week. So I've got another article from another well-established member that's in the works right now, and putting the final touches on that one. So hopefully going to release that this weekend. So you'll have a couple out there, and it's a really good article as well. And so we're really excited about this. And like I said, it's Albert's got something in the works. I've got something in the works. We've got others with other ideas that we've asked to kind of come forward as well. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy these. It's always it's really just an extension of from a certain point of view, if you think about it in a lot of ways. But like Jonesy said, kind of going back to her roots, almost like Lita, right? She went back to the old ways, their traditions of the Chandrillans. The same thing is happening here with the Cantina Cast.
Does this mean I have to braid my hair?
Yes. I expect to see 2 braids, at least 2, one on each side of your head here soon.
Okay.
You should do that. That's actually a good idea. I like that. And Lauren can do it.
Lauren's going to braid my hair?
No. Okay. Lauren's going
to braid her man. I'm going to go on a road trip just to get my hair braided.
Yeah, but no. Yeah, check it out. Cantinacast.com/jeditorials. Please like and comment on those articles and expect more of those to come. Lots of fun. Excited
Yeah,
about
show your support. Yeah, show your support. Hit the like and all that good stuff. One thing that we're gonna do, or that I have kind of simmering, I got an email today actually from, I think it was from Acme Art. And those that have been with us for a while know that I really enjoy the artwork. And one of my favorite Star Wars artists actually has new artwork. And so when we do the Patreon show, I haven't bought any, but when we do the Patreon show, we'll kind of slip that into the news area of what's out there and just how amazing some of this artwork is. So I'll just kind of tease it that way. So you want to show up, or you'll want to make sure you go to cantinacast.com/YouTube if you're listening to this, and hit the little notification and subscribe to the channel so you're notified when we go live, because all of those live streams are live for everyone, not just for Patreon members. So it'll be cool. We'll throw it up on the screen and things like that. So I think it'd be a lot of fun. One of my favorite Star Wars artists finally has something new.
Very cool. And yes, we will be doing a Patreon episode here coming on Sunday. So Sunday night, 9 p.m. Central is when we plan on doing that show. And we'll talk about that here at the very end of the show and kind of tease what we're going to break down and get into as part of that. But let's get some business out of the way. I want to say thank you to all of our Patreon members and everybody that's joined us tonight for the live recording of this episode. But specifically, I know, Jonesy, you got a whole list of people here.
We do, man. The list keeps getting bigger, too, so it's awesome. Now part of the tribe members, Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman Dan, Danny, and Daz, newcomers or new upgrades as well to that. And our Delusions of Grandeur, this is our top tier. Rod, Eugene, Kathy, thank everyone so much for all of your support. Once again, by subscribing to these top tiers, not only do you get your name called out every week and a sincerest of thank yous, but we try to work, we try to invite people and have a guaranteed for the top tier of opportunities to come onto the show and participate in from a certain point of view. It's been a lot of fun. We usually have a panel. We do some top threes of what are our favorite moments in. And so it's a lot of fun. So it's something, if you've ever been interested in getting your thoughts, opinions about Star Wars out there, we invite you to go out there and encourage you to go check those out at cantinacast.com/Patreon. And you'll be able to see the tiers and see if something interests you. We know every dollar is really precious right now, especially with the economy and stuff. So we do appreciate everyone even just taking a look at that and contributing your funds to us. To everything you send to us goes right back into the show in one way or another. I actually just made a small purchase of some extra stickers and pens and stuff, things that we do as a giveaway for those who do come onto the show with us, and things, again, to have on hand. So whenever we do see people, we have little items to hand out and give away as well. So all that kind of goes right back into the show, which hopefully goes right back into y'all in just a different way. So sincerest of thank yous, though, for all of your support over the years. And if you're just downloading the episode, thank you as well. That means a lot to it. It really does keep us going and it motivates us.
Yep. Now, and to be clear, those stickers are come in handy when we're in bathrooms and we want to tag a bathroom with our show. So thanks for supporting that level of vandalism. We do appreciate that.
Well, and if you're Albert, it's going through a drive-through window.
Several drive-through windows in and around the greater Austin area, as a matter of fact. So, okay. Well, enough with the pleasantries. I'm here to get you back on schedule, Jonesy. Let's talk about episode 11, Daughter of Ferrix. This was directed by Benjamin Caron. He also did the announcement episode that we saw earlier this season, and he's got the last episode as well. So this will be his kind of 3 series arc, if you will. It's not really an arc, but you know what I'm saying. This one was written by the man himself, Tony Gilroy, and only a 30-minute episode, which is not a bad thing. I think all in, once you pull out the beginning and the external part of it, it comes out to about 38 minutes. But give me your initial thoughts. What'd you think of the episode?
Did it feel like just over 30 minutes to you?
For me, sort of. In some ways, it felt shorter than normal. But then in other ways, I think it felt right.
Yeah, shorter than normal. I agree with that, but it still felt like a really, full episode. But you had mentioned this when you brought us on air of it maybe not fitting into the top 5, right? And this is very much a kind of your classic setup episode.
Right.
But again, if we've learned anything from the series, for those who think it was just a filler or just one of those really establishing pieces, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I mean, these are the things that help us appreciate the things that happen in these episodes. Don't have that payoff until later on, whenever all of the things that are able to happen or successful, and they work really well. So that's what these episodes, that's where the benefit of these episodes, even though they don't creep to the top, it's a lot more difficult to enjoy what comes later without these types of moments. And I think some of those moments we're going to talk about tonight about what some of those are, right? I mean, we finally get, Cyril Karn's partner in crime back. So that's super exciting, right? We were wondering how this was going to happen and whether he was, what has he been doing? Now we have some clarity around some of that. And we have a path now for Karn getting back into the game. We have more insight as to what is going on with Mon Mothma. And I think especially with her daughter and where she's really at with things, and man, what path she may actually have to take. So, we'll just have to see. I mean, there's a lot of good moments in this episode. It's just very, it's a little bit slower, but then we get to see the Fondor in action, right? And that was pretty cool to be able to see what that was, and just kind of so casual about it, but it was really clever. I thought it was really nice. I don't know if I call it clever, but the way that they got out of the tractor beam was really good. Now I'm really curious whatever he actually did for countermeasures, because it seems like he just released the junk, but we'll talk about some of that here pretty soon. But overall, solid episode though. I mean, really solid, good writing again. The stuff with Melshi and then with the Narkinians, I think was kind of funny at the same time, but also another establishing thing about where the Empire is at, how the natives, how the locals feel about the Empire's influence, and what we experienced, or what Andor experienced on his own homeworld. And the name of I'm drawing a blank. Do you remember what the name of the homeworld was for him?
For who?
For Andor.
Oh, if you not said anything, I would have.
Start with a K. Does it start with a K? Anyway, but you start to see the same trends though, right? It's the mining of it, the killing of the local fish, the local, how do you support yourself and your family, and how do you feed yourself? All of those things are drying up because of the way that the Empire's resourcing and the way that they go and strip the land, and they don't take care of things, and just destroy everything around them, even if it's not their immediate concern. They've contaminated the water. It kills the squigglies. Long live the squigglies. Save the squigglies, Albert. Save.
We've already started the campaign, by the way.
Oh, have we? Where are the t-shirts?
Yeah. It's just a hashtag right now, but it's starting to pick up. Yeah.
Dale coming in strong. Kanari. Thank you very much, Dale. Kanari.
I think Lauren beat him to it, but.
Oh, did she? Oh, well, yeah, not to give.
But she had the wrong spelling, to be fair. So tag team effort. Good job, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Well done, y'all. But yeah, so good episode, solid episode. A lot of things we need to see. More. I think the other thing about Clea is a character that just keeps getting a little more interesting all the time. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting coming off the heels of Luthen's really, epic speech, right, about sacrifice. Clea's got her own story in there too. And I really, really want her to unload and just open the floodgates and to tell us what it is. Because what she is contributing and what her part is in this, very much more of this silent partner, almost silent killer at times. But man, that she's probably sacrificed at least as much as Luthen has, maybe in a different way. But there's a lot there too that is not overt, but it's just simmering under the surface, and you can see what this means to her, but we just don't quite know why. I really do hope that really does come out, and we finally get to understand what this effort means to her and what her contributions really have been, rather than just this kind of silent partner who's really doing a lot in the background that just doesn't necessarily get the credit that the face of, well, I guess the secret face of Axis, does in Luthen.
Yeah. So, for me, okay, so let's be honest. To top the last episode, One Way Out, I mean, that's a tall order, right? I mean, the finale will probably get there, but I mean, we've talked about how that's arguably one of the best things that's been on television in quite some time, Star Wars notwithstanding. So I wasn't expecting it to come out guns blazing, but I felt the episode was pretty solid. Like I said, it does one thing. It does set up a lot of different things. Although there are some things in here that I think we're going to be able to kind of pick at and pull at in kind of a dissective kind of way, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's really setting the stage and setting that tension. The only thing I would question, because it's come up before, this is not the first time we've talked about these two things. Number one, the cutting back and forth in this one, it was, I hate to use the word excessive. But there were some moments that were just very quick, like very short. I think the casting Andor scenes earlier on, right? You're talking like 60 seconds. Yeah, a minute and
Oh,
there it is.
our streak survives, I guess, with with interruptions on your end. All right, folks. Albert's probably going to go and reboot his router once again. So, as we've done the last few times this has happened, we'd love to get everyone's feedback in the chat. Any key moments and things that you really enjoyed about this episode? What was it that that really stuck out to you? What are the parts that are just continue to? Yeah, Albert's poor internet. He's about at wit's end with it. He's a lot nicer about it on air than he is on when we're done with the show about how frustrated he gets. It. I can hear him screaming right now from Austin. So we'll just go to the chat here for a few minutes. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for listening in and sticking with us while we got the technical issues. So Lauren's asking, so what do you think about Marva dying off screen? I think this is an interesting one. I think I'm kind of okay with it. At first, I was wondering if it was real, but then it made no sense for them to fake this type of thing, right? And again, I think we somewhat speculated on this. I mean, there were a couple ways that Marva could have gone, right? One could have been that she would have been killed doing some sort of, daughter of Ferrix and underground type of mission, which may have meant something. Or it could have been kind of this quiet passing of sorts. We knew her health was in, severe decay and things were not going well for her. So I'm kind of okay with this. And we coming into the scene, and I'm kind of on record of liking these slight time gaps where things have happened and we pick up the characters as they're picking up the pieces and actually feeling the emotions and seeing the results of what's going on. And so I think this is one of those cases where I was actually okay with this because we didn't have to go through all the dialogue, and I missed Cassie. And I think some of it was unnecessary. It would have been unnecessary because we know the characters. We kind of know how they feel about one another. We know the problems they have with one another. So I think the way that it happened, it kind of works for me. Now, Miss Sunflower is coming back and saying, I know, Dale, I saw your comment up there, so we'll get there in a second. Miss Sunflower does not think that Marva is dead. And again, I had that hesitation until I actually saw the body wrapped and interred. And I think the part that made that a bit unclear was the opening sequence. It seemed like it was a shot from under the sheets, right? But what I really think it was actually it was B's perspective and through the glass that was on the top of his dome that someone was using him as a coaster or as a table, which I thought was kind of sad and yet funny at the same time. So, but we had speculated about this too. When Cassian finds out about Marva, he's not going to be there for it. And how is he going to respond to that? And I think that's the part at the end of this episode. It's a little unclear what that might be. We think we know what direction he's going to go, especially what everything he's been through. But now, without Marva there, thinking that he had something to go home and be so proud of, now that's going to be really tough to go back to and keep that motivation. These are the times that are trying the most when you're in these moments of transition, and he still very much is, I think. So we'll go back to Dale's comment here. Mon Mothma is a special case. She plays into all the traditions because that's what was expected, but she'll be freeing herself from it all. She'll become a more, quote unquote, normal citizen of the galaxy. That's an interesting take. So are you saying, Dale, that as she breaks free of this kind of monetary, like the reliance on cash and the reliance on credits, that is what's going to free her, is that she's got to get away from all the rich kid feelings? Is that kind of where you're going? Albert has rejoined us. Welcome back, my friend. We're just going to the chat, getting some feedback from folks here and having a conversation. Have you simmered down a little bit? You calmed yourself? Have you found,
yeah, I'm going to write a very stern letter to the president of Spectrum. So,
right. So we had a couple comments here about Miss Sunflower's not sure that Marva is dead. Lauren was asking, and we'll come back and touch on this more formally with you, of course, but what do we think about Marva's death being off screen rather than being on screen, and the kind of reactions to some of that? So, but I know we're going to have a robust conversation there.
Well, it's in my opening thoughts. So let me pick it up. I apologize.
So what are your opening thoughts here? Yep.
Yeah, I apologize again to everybody watching this thing live. It's part of it, right? So I'll look into that again. Let's see. Okay, so all right. So for opening thoughts, it's 38-minute long episode. I guess two things that we have seen and we've talked about before is just kind of the jumpiness back and forth, right? We had a couple of shots in there that were 30 seconds, a minute and 30, somewhere around there with Cassian Andor on Ferrix, and that was kind of jumpy. The other part of it is I just wonder, this feels a lot like the first episode, right? Remember when we watched that first episode, we thought it kind of ends in a weird way. And I don't think this one necessarily ends at a weird spot, right? But I just wonder, and this will probably be determined, will be determined after we've seen the last episode, would it have made sense to kind of just throw these together as a single episode, an hour and 30 minutes long or whatever it is? It just, there's something about the cut that was kind of odd for me that felt a little off. Now it ends on a very emotional level, right? I mean, you can't help but think of the images are conjured up of, Cassian there on the beach of Scarif right before he dies in the sunset. We had the Luthen scene, which was pretty exciting, seeing the Fondor in action, which I'm starting to wonder if this guy's like related to Jedi or has Jedi type connections of some sort, but more on that later. But the other one that was that was, I wouldn't say bothered me, but was surprising was Marva's death. Now it doesn't, I think it still has the same impact, right? We said she had to die, right? There had to be something personal for Cassian Andor inside of this story beyond just what happened to him. And Marva was the likely candidate for something like that. So does it take anything away from her story? No, not necessarily. And I think there's still things that can happen that are really going to dig the knife or the dagger deeper into Cassian's heart. That's going to really, harden his, absolve to go against the Empire in a lot of different ways.
Oh gosh, when he sees Bix, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of things here. There's plenty of ammunition for Cassian, or fuel for the fire as well. But the thought about Marva living, though, I hadn't considered that. I wonder what the motive would be there, like what would be the purpose of her surviving. This would, I guess, I would assume then that she's going to live on to. That would be first, like setting something up for season 2, where she is still working and operating. But I think she is dead. I like the idea though.
Well. I think so. Well, I think the way that they shot it in the intro was I think what maybe gave it a little bit of uncertainty, because it looked like it was almost under the sheet, even though it was through the glass on top of B's, tabletop head that someone had used him for.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to say it was like somehow Marva has passed away, right? It's not like Palpatine has returned or, and I have a feeling the only thing that really, the other part that bothered me is like when they showed her leaving, right? And they had kind of that mini funeral procession. They talked about how they're going to make a big deal about this. Like they've got like 2 days, but then when we get to, was it Brasso? He says that, oh, she's now a brick, and we'll get into that because the name of the episode is Ashes to Ashes, Dust to Brick. But
I don't think that part's happened yet. I think he was just saying what the plan was for her. Yeah, I don't think he was confirming that it's already done.
Well, he tells B2 that she has, though.
Yeah, I know, but I think he was just
okay. Well, yeah. I hope that's not the case, because then that kind of really throws a wrench in some of my theories in terms of because that really takes the oomph out of her death in a lot of different ways. So, but beyond that, I think overall the episode was, again, just fine. I do wonder if it felt a little weird, and I do wonder if it's going to change anything, or if it would have changed anything to have shown these last 2 episodes just kind of back to back, similar to like we talked about having shown either the first 2 episodes together or even that first arc, all 3 of them together makes more sense. But okay, so let's get into
some specifics here.
Well, let's talk about the way we're going to break this down is because it did do a lot of jumping. I broke it up into Cyril, Mothma, Luthen, and then we'll end with Cassian Andor's story. So we'll kind of follow those. All right. And Cyril's is pretty easy. I know there are a lot of people here that still are not on board with this character. I think this one maybe does a little bit more for those people that have really kind of been wondering, like, what in the heck's his whole point of the story. And I know, speaking with my brother, he's a big Cyril fan. He's actually a big Edie fan as well. So I think there is an audience for this. I know it's not everybody's taste, and certainly not the characters that we probably rally around or think about when Star Wars comes to mind, but there's just something oddly creative and entertaining about these characters in a weird way. But yeah, anyway, so we get this call from Mosk, right? And I got a question for you too, and I want to just I'm not trying to stir anything up, but when I think of Star Wars, I always think holograms, right? That's how we communicate in Star Wars. And I was trying to think, like, how many times have we seen video conferencing in Star Wars? It's not something we see very often. I thought of, like, even more recently with Luke's appearance in Mando season 2, right? We got to see the cameras and we saw that through a video rather than a hologram, which makes sense. But by and large, there's something Star Warsy about the holograms versus people talking on like video chat. And I honestly had not put a lot of thought into this. And maybe in Rebels, there might've been a couple episodes, or maybe in Clone Wars, there was something, but by and large, I think that's how they communicate. But we had not only just one, but we had two instances of this, right? We had the Mosk and Cyril conversation. And later on we had the Dedra and, was it Corv? I guess she was talking to, or somebody, I forget now who it was, as well. But what do you think about that? Does that bother you in any way? Or do you think that's just,
well, and then we basically had a phone booth with Andor calling back to Ferrix, right?
Yeah. It literally looked like it looked like a Star Wars phone booth, and we got what that meant, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it makes sense, right? Not everybody can afford a hologram projector, and to have all of the things that require to beam it to somewhere else. So it makes sense that they would still be doing things via a screen and a video feed, if you will. And so I didn't think twice about it. For the most part, I thought more about the phone booth than anything else. I was like, oh wow, that's a phone booth. That makes sense, But again, there's a lot of audio communication between characters all the time. So comms are in audio in general. So why wouldn't there be a kind of more basic, not as fancy? And so I started going back and thinking about, okay, well, where have we seen all the holograms? And it does seem to be everywhere, but it's always organizations that tend to have a lot of money too, right? We saw when Revenge of the Sith, when they're showing the Death Star plans, the Geonosians. We see it throughout the Empire, and we know they've got funds and cash to be able to do it. We've seen it on a droid, an R2 unit, which was part of the royal, fleet of droids with R2D2. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it makes sense that there's a certain class that goes with those types of, features and that technology. So I really didn't think twice about it. And if anything, I kind of liked it, especially being able to see the background. And I think this is why it worked so well, is that you could see what Mosk was doing, not only hear the words he was saying, but to see the stuff around him, which made it kind of it felt more like what was going on in Mandalorian season 3, but also when they were aboard the prisoner ship on the Mandalorian episode.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, so it very much felt kind of like that too, right? It was just being able to see everything that's going on in the background and the sparks and the interference and the just whatever's going on, the interruptions. And so I liked it, and it was cool being able to see Mosk, that he actually found Cyril Karn and somehow has connections back to Primor, some of the basically the good, there's a few good ones left, right, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
right.
So that was kind of cool that he was still looking out for this, and that Andor is still at the top of his mind as well. But then you finally saw life in Cyril Karn. We saw it when he was with Dedra, but now we just see this energy just come out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. But of course, Edie's right there to make sure that she's ready to take the pot shot as soon as the opportunity arises. But so, what did you think about all that then?
Well, I mean, I felt like Mosk was true to his character. Like, as much as we've talked about Cyril not being able to let this go, and it's consumed his life, and he wants to have justice. Almost, it's probably revenge or vengeance at this point, right? After having brewed for so long, but it's good and reassuring that somebody like Mosk, who we said was just a carbon copy of this guy, right? They're cut from the same cloth. They're very much similar in terms of their approach to things. Good confirmation that Mosk has not let this go either, right? I mean,
right.
He could have easily just not called him, but in his mind, he's still the sergeant, and he still reports up to him, and they still have justice to do, or have a mission to accomplish. And so that was good to hear that. I think it bodes well too for having Mosk as a character that I think is going to stick around into season 2. I would love to see him and Cyril both stick around into season 2 and see them come to do whatever. And I just want to be clear about something. So on the episode that we've got coming Sunday night, the Patreon episode, we're going to get into more speculation about where we think the finale is going to go. So I don't want to spoil too much about my thoughts in terms of where I think those two characters are going to go. But yeah, good to see that he was still taking orders or still following orders from Cyril, right? That means something to him, and it means something to Cyril too. I like what you said about the life being in him, because we've just seen him so void of that.
Right.
And suddenly that it was a whole different character all over again. It was the character that we'd seen in the first 2 episodes of the series, which was great. Um, the Edie, though, and her comment about the mystery of your former triumphs have been vanquished. I can sleep.
Well, that's kind of fitting that he's quoting about sleeping peacefully when the internet is bugging out again. There you are.
Yeah,
There you are, Peter.
I'm going to stay on. This is going to be one heck of an edit. But let's see if it stabilizes here.
R2, see if you can lock down those stabilizers.
It's back, at least for now. But then the other quick scene that we've got that came in here was Cyril sneaking into Mom. At first, I thought it was his box, right? His lockbox that he had talked about, his drawer, or whatever it was. But then when I started looking, I'm like, well, either he's into a lot of costume jewelry or this is his mom's, which
was he stealing
I think
money?
is the case. What's that?
Was he stealing money?
Yeah, he was stealing credits out of looked like a wallet with credit cards in it, but it was credits. But yeah, stealing from Mom's stuff when she's not there, and then he's
reaffirming everything that she thinks about him. Nice done.
Well, yeah, I mean, she probably isn't wrong. So the way she goes about it, it's she's a jerkhead. But yeah, I mean, he's headed to Andor, so this is going to bring him into it, and I still like. Again, we'll talk about it more on Sunday night, but I have a feeling this is not going to go well for anybody, because he is the X factor in all this. He's going to throw a wrench in this thing for all the right reasons, but no one is expecting this dude to show up, and God knows what he's going to do at that point.
Yeah,
so what do you
agreed.
think?
No, I mean, agreed. I think this is going to be we know that the spark is about to be lit, this firecracker that's Ferrix. And we've seen it in the trailers. We know it's coming. We know there's a lot of scenes we haven't seen. And his involvement, yeah, it's just another wild card about what to expect. And who does that help? Who does that harm? And does everything just go completely chaotic, which is probably where it's going. But again, we'll speculate a little bit more on some of that later on. But I like so a question for you, though, was that he kept calling Mosk Sergeant. My presumption, though, is that Mosk has been dismissed. So he's still not Sergeant, but Cyril is showing that respect that they are basically still sergeant and deputy inspector. Did you take away the same type of thing, or did you say no? He's just pulling the the bottom level duty.
No. That's like a real world carryover, right? If you've served in the military, or you've served in law enforcement, or in fire protection, any of those agencies, once you make a rank, that's your name, and people call you that forever. It's like somebody that was a coach at school, right? We still, they retire, we call them coach for years and years on end.
Sure, but I just meant, I mean, it seemed like they would have been probably dishonorably charged, I guess. Well, maybe it may not have been that specific. I'm trying to think back to some of the other episodes. They were probably just kind of let go and given the opportunity to leave. But yeah, so I got that.
I mean, they were security, right?
But he's not working.
They were probably just fired.
But he's not still employed, I guess. He's been relocated to doing, grunt work down in the lower levels or something like that, right?
Right. No, exactly. He's working, on an oil rig of sorts. Just the noise is going on in the background. He's talking about drilling, or what was it? I can't remember what the word or what he was using. But yeah, he's doing manual labor of some sort, because it's probably all the work that he's going to be able to get. He's not like Cyril, who's got Uncle Harlow or connections to work somewhere else.
I thought we were going to get Uncle Harlow when she was leaving the house. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, we're finally going to get Uncle Harlow. Here it comes.
Big reveal.
Like, nope.
No.
Made me suffer through, oh gosh, Mama Edie there, looking kind of rough, getting woke up in the middle of the night. I was like, man, at least we're going to get this Uncle Harlow thing put to rest, but no. Disappointment.
She was looking a little rough there in the middle of the night. But
C+ episode.
So, all right. So that's one person now heading to Andor, and that's really all we got with Cyril. Now, Mon Mothma scenes are probably even maybe a little bit longer, but in terms of what happened, I felt like this one, there was a lot more here that goes unsaid, even though the scenes weren't very long. But what did you think? I mean, this starts off with this practicing the chant, right? The chant is the word that Vel uses a little bit later, I think, or maybe it was Mothma. But in a way, I don't want to read the whole thing, but yielding and acceptance, right? It sounds like it's a mantra for them to.
I think we should read the whole thing because I don't think you don't really get a really clear picture of it unless you're reading the subtitles.
Okay.
And even the subtitles were kind of cut in and out with the dialogue of what was happening on the screen. So I think it's worth kind of going through it.
All right. Well, here's what it says. It says yielding and acceptance, safe in the braid of the old ways, true and steady and braided in trust. The old ways hold us, safe in the knot, in the binding. The old ways teach us, bound against the wind, tied to shore, tethered in permanence, and then it cuts off.
Right.
And so, I mean, what you would deduct from that is that these braids symbolize, the old ways and specifically this Chandrilan marriage arrangement
Betrothal,
custom that they've got, right? And that was, again, I love when they subvert expectations because I was not expecting this. And even further than that, knowing that Peril is open on this subject, because I believe Mothma when she says that, like, Peril doesn't really have a, strong bone in his body one way or the other about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. But for her, grasping onto something like this, I think it makes sense because they're far away from their home planet, right? They're, who knows? She says it's the latest trend. And so, maybe it is literally a trend that comes and goes over, time especially with the younger kids and that sort of thing. But it is a little disturbing to think that she is, accepting of something that Mothma knows probably isn't successful, and Vel has completely turned away from. Like, she had wants nothing to do with this custom in this particular way.
It was interesting because usually with the amount of defiance that we've seen from, and between with her Lita's defiance to Mon Mothma specifically, but also kind of taking Perrin's side, against Mon Mothma in some cases, and we still see the really sharp glances that Lita gives Mon Mothma. Is that usually we would see that as a some sort of indication of, like, I would not want that because that's how my poor dad has reigned into this thing, and this is what it's done to our family.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if we didn't have this tradition, maybe things would be better or different, right? You things that have gone wrong, and you blame it on all the things that have come before it, rather than looking at kind of the nature of the problems, rather than just your point of these other circumstances, and it's right. So it was really interesting that she would go back to that traditional way. But there was another part of me that the more I thought about it, though, was, okay, well, this lifestyle on Coruscant doesn't work for them. It's what's torn their family apart. So if you just turn a little bit, our family used to be a lot happier, but this environment and all of this just doesn't work. We need to get back to the values of what we had at home, and Perrin seems like he's a bit more of a traditionalist, even though Mon Mothma, like you said, does share that he's a bit more open-minded on this subject, surprisingly, with the arranged marriage and the betrothal aspect of things. But those were kind of the two ideas I had about why she might view this. One was very much kind of what I expected, and like you said, throw that out the window.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's just going back to this. The way those ways are good and popular because of all of the things we see in the galaxy are because we have let go of our sins. And we hear this in our own cultures today too, right? We need to get back to who we are as people, get back to who we are as a culture, what matters most to us, get back to family values, all these types of things, right? We hear all the time, and we've heard them all the time, but you hear them in very, very different instances, and you tend to hear them in times of peril and struggle in particular, right? Because people are looking for something to grasp back onto that gives them comfort. It gives them steady ground. And for Lita, who might feel like things are out of control a little bit, this might be one of those things that, it's like, well, this works. I mean, our culture is rich in history and success. Mm-hmm. So why those ways can't be that wrong or that bad, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the way, from her perspective, it's not the ways, it's not the tradition that's the problem here. It's the fact that mom is the problem, or the fact that mom's job has become the problem.
Exactly.
And those are two totally different things. Now, the reality, at least from my perspective, in my opinion, is that, I think it's great to have family values and that sort of thing, but it's not a one size fits all. And I think that's where Vel's coming from. I think that's where Mon Mothma's coming from. It didn't work for her. in a lot of ways. And I think as as you get older, you tend to realize that okay, yeah, it is not a one size fits all kind of thing. And so, but for Lita, I mean, she's young and the future's bright, and she finds stability, like you said, in something like this, in the traditional ways that have gone on for so many years, and she thinks that she's going to be able to do something differently, or whatever the case is. They did mention that she finds the elder, right? So there's some elder, I don't know, not a prophet, but let's call it an elder, I guess. But somebody who's got
it's like the shaman that is the spiritual leader of your clan of sorts, right? Yeah.
Right. So, she found faith in that person, or that person's been, preaching the gospel, if you will, and she's been kind of buying into it. And so all of this makes sense, I think, especially for her age, right? This is kind of what we all kind of go through with that.
Yeah. I'm guessing the elder probably had like a Joel Osteen, channel on TV. She just kind of stumbled over.
Joel. That's exactly what it is, right? Joel Osteen.
So let me ask you a question though. So the lead that's kind of buried in all this, of course, now is that Mon Mothma has this opportunity to not commit her daughter to Davo's son, but at least open that door. And Lita is very much interested. And of course, she's a kid. We can call her a child, but she's a teenager. So she's making and exploring, just making decisions on her own, but not necessarily able to do so, completely. But she's coming of age at the same time.
Right.
So how much is this really, how much of what we're seeing Mon Mothma's reactions in the conversation with Vel, how much of that is just anger at herself because she knows her resolve is eroding about giving in to Davo's demands in order to help her out, because she knows, I mean, she said it multiple times in this conversation, I am in so much trouble. I didn't know how much trouble I was until I had people trying to solve simple problems, and they found out, oh, by the way, you are screwed,
Yeah, I think, and just kind of a further extension of that is the fact that Luthen told her to be careful, and she said he warned me, that this could happen, and she is in a lot of trouble. Like, I still feel like she's made this decision with some kind of an out. Like, she's gonna try to figure it out, but she felt like there was really no other option, and she had to do this. But I'll make the commitment, and then I'll figure out a way to get her out and make sure this doesn't happen. But I think the other side of it is she's a realist too. I think what we're seeing is her trying to come to grips and confront the reality of, I am now tied to somebody like Davo, who is, he's a crime lord. He's always going to have something on me, right? Even beyond the marriage, even if this worked out, what's to say he doesn't turn around and use this as leverage later down the road? It's always going to be.
Well, he called it out already too, right? I mean, he was, people come to people like me and of your class and stature and think that you are sacrificing your moral and ethical being, when no, that's not the case. And I'm not saying this is world according to me. I'm saying this is world according to Dabo. That's not the case. You should be able to enjoy your wealth. You should be able to enjoy your privacy, right? Of how you want to distribute your money and use your money and move your money with freedom, not this overreach oversight, that we've got today. He's freeing you from the chains of the empire, basically. But you're right, it's a slippery slope of one favor. Does it lead to another? And now he's got dirt, and he knows that it's that out there because he knows, I mean, these people know this, right? They don't want to owe favors. And Mon Mothma clearly doesn't want to owe anybody a favor, especially someone like that, because she knows that she's in a precarious position to where any kind of intervention into what she's doing, the spool comes unraveled really, really quick.
Yeah, he's the devil. I mean, he'll say what he needs to say, do what he needs to do to get somebody to succumb.
He looks like the devil, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he even looks like one. Yeah, you're right. But I mean, he's going to do and say whatever he needs to get her on board and get comfortable with it. But make no mistake about it. I mean, this is an extremely power move on his part, and the leverage that he has now, he will always hold that against her. And I think that's what she's coming to grips with when she's thinking about this is, she's putting her daughter in a very precarious position, given, her track record of marriage and the tradition itself. And she's young and all that. But at the same time, this is a huge, huge risk to her personally, not to mention, her position in the Senate. She's a risk now to Luthen. I mean, what's Luthen going to say when he finds out about this? you know? This is another, I mean, we see it in this episode. He's going to such great lengths to extinguish any kind of connection, put out the fires to make sure no roads lead back to him. And yet she's having to go, she's kind of gone around him, right? I don't know that, because they've not had any contact since that second meeting where he basically said, get the money, we need the money. And she went and did it, but I don't think he's going to be okay with the risk that she's now exposed, right? I think there's too much has been taken on, at least from his perspective. This is too much exposure for him.
Well, and right now they, presumably don't need the money as quickly because they've got, I mean, they're sitting on 80 million credits, right?
Yeah.
So I think
they're
you're
funded
okay for a little while.
quite a bit.
Right.
But, so yeah, it's all very, cat and mouse here. The last comment that she makes, and then they get into how it was so much easier before Aldani. Again, that was kind of the game changer for a lot of this stuff. There was, she mentioned when she's talking about Luthen, she says, he warned me, he knows what he knows. And this is not the only instance. If you think back a couple episodes, or in many of the episodes already, including this one, there's another instance where we get, there's such a mystery, such a veil that exists with Luthen and Clay as well. But those two characters in particular, about where do they get their knowledge? What do they know? How do they know what they know? How many connections do they really have? I mean, it's like Saul was saying, he's got people everywhere. And just the amount of pressure that exists in staying in contact with all these people, keeping it a secrecy, all the lies that he's probably told, and trying to keep all those lies straight so that there's a very continuous and, a continuous story, that you get why in that last episode he does and gives the speech that he does, because that's a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety and pressure on somebody like Luthen. So the more we learn more about him, the more we don't know about him, and the more I want to know even more about him, if that makes any sense at all.
Yep, exactly. Like he said to Mon Mothma, I've got a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah, he sure does. And he's not talking about his kids.
No.
Okay, well, let's talk about Luthen, because this was, I thought he had the big scene in this episode at the very end here. But we start with on Coruscant, and I've kind of thrown Vel's and Clea's conversation and scene in this particular lot of scenes. But we open there where she's restoring a coin. Now, I don't want to, this shouldn't be the coin dissection, but I didn't get a chance to look at the symbol very much, but they did spend some time on it. And I'm wondering if there is any significance to that symbol. I have not had a chance to go look. I don't know if anybody else in the chat has done the research, or if you've had a chance. It could be nothing.
I have not. Yeah, I have not. But I do like that they actually are a legit coin shop. I mean, they're legit antiquities. They actually know this stuff if you're gonna actually work.
If you're going to have a front, you need to do it all in. I mean, we learned if Breaking Bad taught us anything, that's one thing with the Chicken Shack. If anybody watched Breaking Bad, you know what I'm talking about. Pollos Locos. Okay, so Vel pays Luthen, or she's coming to see Luthen, right? And turns out that Clay is there. And I don't know what's going on with these two, but they're dynamic. Like, there's something that, I mean, we saw bits and pieces of it in that first interaction when they met, in the shadows on Coruscant. But there was something in this that, like, the tension was really, really thick. And it's almost like they were in competition for his attention, or maybe more. I don't know what it is, but again, we'll speculate a little bit more on the Sunday episode. But any thoughts about the tension that you saw between them? And I'm sure I wasn't misguided in that way.
No, I mean, it's definitely there. And again, we keep seeing it over and over because we saw it, like you mentioned, the first time we saw it, we thought, okay, well, Vel must be related. It must be his daughter, something like that, his niece. There's a caring there, and there's this person who's limiting, almost like the wife, aspect of it for Luthen, and preventing this relationship, or preventing it from getting too close, or maybe putting some distance in it. But now that we know that she's related to Mon Mothma, now it takes on a totally different, flavor. She definitely wants that attention and recognition, I think, from Luthen, or that acknowledgement of what it was. But you're right. The conversation about what have you given Luthen lately? Well, I gave him Aldani. What have you given him? And I like Clea's response. That's exactly what it kind of came out to, right? It was Clea's own way of saying everything. I give him always, because I'm always giving him something, and she does give him everything. Mm-hmm. Like everything that she does day in and day out, is in service to what they agreed to do, however many years ago or however long ago it was. And so, but I don't know if but it is interesting though. Like, what does Vel view their relationship at? What does Vel want? Or does she view him as a father figure, something like that? So it's not necessarily in competition from an affection standpoint, because quite honestly, these characters seem a bit incapable of true love when it comes to, Clay and Luthen.
There's too much going on.
Yeah, but we also know that Vel's tied to Cinta too, right? So I think some of it is,
right.
I still think it's kind of this fatherly love and affection and appreciation. She wants to feel recognized and seen, and I have a feeling that Luthen's probably that figure for her, from a parental type of figure, besides her almost big sister cousin in Mon Mothma.
It also could be the inner circle thing, like Luthen. I would imagine his inner circle is probably pretty small, and it has to be pretty small. And somebody like Vel, who feels like, hey, I've given him Aldani, I've done, whatever number of other jobs that she's had.
I'm his right hand. I'm his right hand girl, not you. Yeah.
I'm the person in operations. I'm down in the trenches. I know what's going on, and yet you're the one that's sitting here cleaning coins all day. And I'm sure there's a jealousy thing there, or just a vying for power in some ways. So it could just be that. I didn't mean to kind of go down the path of relationships or admiration in some way.
It's fun to explore all of it, but you're right. I think we see this in the corporate world a lot, right? The difference between operations and head office.
Yeah.
Both of them have a very different way of thinking. When you think of, I'm in ops, I'm out there doing the work day in, and I'm the one that runs things on the ground. Whereas if I'm in head office, maybe I'm commercial and I'm doing business development. I'm the one bringing the business in. I'm signing the contracts. This place runs because I'm out there, finding the business. Well, no, the reality is it doesn't work without both of you.
Yeah, they both
exist. You're both important for very different, for different reasons, for your own purpose. It's not a competition, but our own nature gets in the way of some of that, of wanting to be seen, wanting to be recognized. But we also know that kind of goes back to leadership too, right? And Luthen's not really a leader. I mean, he makes things happen, but I wouldn't call him a leader in any kind of way.
Right. He's not nurturing careers or relationships or any of that stuff. I mean, we clearly see that with what's happening with Saul and Anto Krieger and a number of other instances. I think another example that happens in the scene where I think it really is truly about Vel wanting to be part of the inner circle, wanting to be, feel acknowledged and of importance in what she's doing, right? Validated for what she's doing, is when she's like, she has intel, and she wants to give it to Luthen directly. She does not want to pass it on to Clea because she's worried that Clea is going to just never mention that, hey, this comes to us via Vel, or Vel did a great job by bringing us information. I think this is probably what's happened, because Clea tells her, whatever information you've got, I'm paraphrasing, but she says, I'll make sure that you get credit for it. Now that happens. Well, we haven't seen it happen, actually, right? No, we never saw Clea reach out to him. So that could she could still keep her word in that regard. But yeah, that's important. And I think it's important to Vel to know that, hey, this is, I'm down here and I'm working and I'm bringing you good intel, good information, things that you need to know, something that's super important, and it's not Clea. So here I am, please see me, kind of thing.
So I guess and we won't speculate too terribly much, but I think I'll ask the question. Do you think that Clea does pass that to Luthen, or do you think that she uses that to pursue her own interests of taking care of Cassian Andor and taking him off the board?
I don't know enough about their relationship, honestly, to say one way or the other, but if I were a betting man based on the relationship they have right now, I don't know why suddenly she would do that for Vel. So I would think she's gonna tell him. I don't know if she's gonna go overtly claim credit for it, right? I don't think she's gonna go that far, but I think by omittance, she is still gonna do the damage, and I think that's exactly what's gonna happen. She's just gonna let him know, which, again, not to jump ahead, but we don't really get a kind of a wrap for Luthen, but Luthen seems to be going back there as well. Like, it feels like he's, in this next episode, early on, out of the gate, at some point, Clay is going to reach out to him and say, hey, maybe she gives her credit, maybe she doesn't, but I think she's going to let Luthen know, you got to get there to Ferrix. because Andor is about to get exposed. The Empire, all the chatter that's going on, all these people are going there. It's very busy. Marva's Pass. He's still the loose link, right? That dangling link that's out there, and she wants to clamp that down pretty hard. So, yeah, I think Luthen is, I guess, the second person now in this episode that we've got maybe unconfirmed, but probably confirmed to be heading to Ferrix as well. Which, again, more crossroads happening there. I did find it very odd though that she was pretty cold. She said, "I'll let him know, do that, nothing else," and she just kind of walks away. So, yeah, those two. It doesn't sound like there's any love lost between the two of them.
Right.
So, okay. So the next part, I guess, of Luthen's is his return to Saw Gerrera's base. Now, at first, when this scene was unfolding, I was thinking, wait a minute, why is he going back to him? And later on, we find out that he had renegotiated, right? Because I think he reaches out to her. But it sounds like Saul wanted to reopen the offer. Again, we learned that a little bit later on from Clea. And okay, so I don't want to spin too much about this, and I don't know if people are talking about it, but that thing that he pulled out, when he walks up there and he sees two tubes and they're kind of patting him down, they pull out that baton-looking thing. Is that not a lightsaber to you?
No.
I think it is. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, and if you've got your tinfoil hat, feel free to put that on now.
I'll put my virtual one, though.
And I'm not saying as a Jedi. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But although that would be kind of cool or interesting if he was in some way related, because there's too many signs that point to him as having the ability to have those. I mean, if anybody's going to have an artifact that was formerly a lightsaber, or maybe a lightsaber that was embedded in a hilt like that, maybe it's like the cane that what's his name, Terra Sinube used, right? Or some other ancient artifact. But when he turns that thing, there are buttons on that thing. And again, these writers, we've already learned this from this season and just good writing in general. They don't show you those things unless they're going to use them at some point. So I could be spitting a lot of conspiracy theories here, but I just wonder if that thing is a weapon of some sort that's got some kind of, Jedi ties, or maybe there's a kyber crystal of some sort. Maybe that blue kyber crystal that he has is the one that powers that particular item, and your mind can go a lot of different ways. But if it wasn't for the dang Fondor spitting out the Darth Maul lightsaber blades, I wouldn't really be going down this path of the theory. But anyways, you can tell me I'm crazy. What do you think?
Well, I just don't want it, I guess, I don't want Jedi or lightsabers to creep into this any more than, maybe a passing comment, because I think it would just do a disservice to the show. I mean, I understand it's all part of the same universe. I understand there's a lot of ties to Jedi. I understand there's a lot of peripheral things that involve the Jedi in general, but they're forgotten. They're a thing of the past at this point. There's no hope of rekindling that. For someone to have that artifact and show it, I think it kind of goes against what we've seen in this show. The real grounded, I hate to use the word gritty because I think it's a bit overused at this point, but it's just a very grounded, realistic approach set within Star Wars. And I think things like a lightsaber start to diminish some of that. I agree with you. I think it is a weapon. I think it is something that's probably pretty neat. But is it a lightsaber? I'm going to go with no. Or anything kyber related, I'm going to go with no. Do we know if he even got his sky kyber back? I don't think we've officially seen him.
He hasn't seen Andor
it with him, right? But he gave it back to Vel, right?
Right. Yeah, he said give him this or whatever.
Yeah, I don't remember Vel giving it back to Clea or something like that when they met. So I don't know if it's actually made its way back to Luthen at this point. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't think we know for sure. It's not been confirmed.
Right. But again, that was kind of bound and put on a necklace as it was. So it wasn't actively being used for anything. Not that couldn't be the case. But anyway, I just I'm enjoying finally having kind of Jedi free stuff, like 100% Jedi free stuff. And it's just a different flavor for us with Star Wars. Jedi are very much part of Star Wars. I'm not arguing against that at all. But if we're going to commit to no Jedi, like we thought Mandalorian was, let's just go and commit to no Jedi, and just go from there. We can talk about them because they're part of the galaxy, but I don't want to see really anything except a long forgotten memory of the Jedi, because I think it just fits with this timeline of where we're at. and the Jedi are not even on the tip of a tongue or even the back of the mind of the people at this point. They were a forgotten, faded memory.
Yeah.
And
so, and don't get me wrong. Like I know you're kind of talking through all the scenarios. I'm not suggesting that he's going to pull this out and suddenly wield this sucker and he's defending himself. I'm not saying that. But how would you feel in an instance where, let's say they're backed into a corner of some sort, again, the two of them, there's a wall, and he just happens to ignite this thing and use it to cut himself out, and Cassian's like, what in the world's going on? He, turns it off, and they go on, and they never make mention of it again, right? It's kind of there because it feels like, for me, I think that would be...
Hold on. They see this mystical object that is reminiscent of a lightsaber, and they just never want to talk about it again.
No, I'm saying like it's not part of the story. Like it's not gonna, because what you're saying is we don't need to have him. So it doesn't need to be like, if he ignites this thing and he cuts out of again, I'm using just a scenario here, but he cuts a hole in the wall and they get out and he turns it off. There's not going to be any time. They don't need to, like, I think if they sat down and said, what was that? Well, that is the ancient weapon that would be too much. It's way too much. Right. But somebody like Luthen that could have this and use it as a tool, even though he's not necessarily a Jedi, as a tool itself, I think makes sense, given he is he's got all kinds of artifacts, and we know Palpatine was after these things, and I don't know. I guess where I'm going is it almost feels like he's the archaeologist. He is kind of like the Indiana Jones. I mean, for God's sakes, he has the idol in there, or the stones from was it Temple of Doom? Right. Kalima. So I mean, I don't know. It would be a nice nod, in my opinion. I think it'd be cool to see that, but I don't want him to be a Jedi. And I'm with you. Like it needs to be there, but it doesn't need to be in our face.
Yeah, I think it can work. I'm not being. If it were to show up and it makes sense in the scene and it works, then cool. I don't have any real objections to it.
Yeah.
I think I just really want to see Star Wars follow through on, I won't say a commitment because I don't know if it's been that strong, but we've gone 11 episodes without mention of any of it or without any kind of real. We had a Kyber, and the Kybers kind of make sense within the context of this show because that's what Rogue One was really about, and what we've seen throughout Rebels and some of that as well. So there's definitely a lot of connective tissue there, and it makes sense. But to see something resembling a Jedi weapon in practice for whatever purpose that might be, even if it's just a tool or a cut, to me, I'd prefer not to, but in the right circumstances, I wouldn't necessarily object to it. I mean, because again, what we see on the Fondor is interesting enough of what the heck is that? Are those just lasers, or is that Kyber because it's a steady stream of almost infinite, plasma, if you will, with finger quotes. So, but again, I think it just, does it break? Lauren is saying it much better than me, follow through on a tone promise. And I guess that's my pushback is, does it break the tone? I think there's ways to not break the tone, but does it kind of do it by default? Because how can your characters not, what is that? Where'd you get that? Now, Luthen's going to be like, that's not of your concern right now, and then focus on the task at hand. But then it's like, oh, well, we just red herring this type of thing. And so do we have to come back to it at that point? Or they just kill Luthen at that point? I mean, there's a lot of places you can go with that. But anyway, not to belabor too much, but I'd like to see let's just commit to, not having that kind of stuff. And that's totally cool because I think the cool thing is we don't need it. I think that's the really interesting part is we don't need those types of things in order to continue the story we've got. And I think that's a testament to what they've done and why start now. I get at this point, at least for this season. Maybe next season it makes more sense. But yeah. Anyway,
okay.
But it means something. It means something. But what is it?
It means something. I just find it horribly odd and convenient that they showed it, and he makes that comment of either put it down or give it back. Right. So it means something to him, and it's just, I don't know.
Right.
They're sticking it in our face, and so or it's like, latch onto that stuff.
Don't look at it from this end and hit the button. Yeah.
Right. Don't pull a Luke Skywalker.
I know when you made that comment though. When you made the comment though, that is that flash. You're like, oh yeah, you're gonna cut your arm off with it or something like that. So
yeah,
trust me, all those thoughts went through my head.
I did like the fact that Tube said he was in a mood when he was talking about Saw Gerrera, which I thought, well, okay, this is cool. We're gonna get a flavor of Rogue One.
He was in a good mood.
Yeah, he was all revved up. He was fired up about what was going on. Now I guess the question that I have, and not that it really matters, but what was it that got him all? Because I mean, he completely is all in on Spellhouse Power Station. He's reinvigorated. He's energized. He's talking about, he's got conditions, of course, right? He'll get the air power, but I'm not taking orders from him. Talking about Anto, but he does say he wants what's in the Eastern Garrison. So I don't know, plus all the stuff that Luthen promised them. And we're probably never going to know what it was, but there was something that intrigued him about this mission, right? Some intel that he got off screen, off camera, because I think Luthen was just as surprised. And that's why Luthen is there to say, look, you can't go through with this, because if you go through with this, you're exposing me. And I don't want to jump ahead here, but that's really what it was about. This is self-preservation from Luthen's perspective. He's not going in there to save Saw Gerrera, because he's going in this to save his own butt, is really what it's kind of boiling down to. But I do wonder why Saw was suddenly on board with what was going on.
Yeah, that's something I'm not really sure about either, because it was a very different tone, a very dramatic change in his, like, where he's just got all this energy and he's ready to go. And you basically got to, fight him to not go at this point. And so it was kind of curious why, and I guess, I don't know why Luthen went out there in the first place then. I mean, it was just kind of writing of convenience. I don't know, but I mean, because why would he go out there if he didn't think he had to convince him to not go on this mission, unless he was just going out there to make sure that there wasn't any kind of second thought on his side.
The way I interpreted was that somehow Saul reached out to him and said, "I'm in on Spellhouse," and Luthen was like, "Okay, I need to leave immediately and go put a stop to this, because he can't be exposed to the ISB, and it's a trap and all that, because at the end of the day, if he gets captured, it's going to come back to me," is really how it came down to. I just don't understand what was the motivation, what was his motive for suddenly jumping on board with that whole particular thing.
Right. But I do like it, and this was mentioned in the chat, though. David Rogers just popped in and said the Saw appearance was so great. He's so paranoid. And it was really nice to see that come through, right? Of, wait, why are you changing your mind? Unless you're ISB, and you could just see the wheels come off of all of the paranoia, all the different paths that he thinks he saw as going to be betrayed. And, and with this guy who's just shady all the time and won't give you a straight answer or anything like that, I like that we finally got that Saw come out a little bit too, not just the in your face kind of character, but the character that has always got looking over his shoulder at the same time and unsure who's going to stab him in the back. Yeah.
And this is an extension. We've talked about Rebel Rising, the novel that the precursor novel to Rogue One. There are instances, and they're very specific instances, where you understand how he starts to develop the sense of paranoia. I think part of it is his mind is kind of going away. Right? The weight of this war is so heavy that he is starting to kind of lose it at times. Right? He's, quote, in a mood, as TuTube said in this right before this scene started. On top of that, he's got so many, like Luthen, he's got his hands in so many different things. And he is always trying to mitigate risk. He is doing this for the greater good, as he mentions here. He's doing it for war. And so there are a lot of relationships that he establishes that don't ever turn out the way he wants to. And then on top of that, you have somebody like Luthen, of all people, right? You would think Luthen and him, since they're kind of working together, Luthen is the one that's really fueling a lot of this paranoia, because he knows very well that Luthen has a lot of intel and he's not sharing everything. I mean, make no mistake about it, Saul's not a stupid person. Half the things that Luthen says are probably true, and half of them are not true. We saw that with Lonnie, right? He told Lonnie, like, we had nothing to do with Aldhani, right? He has to play that game, but Saul knows he has to play that game. So this is all, all of this is really kind of feeding into that level of paranoia, but just to know that somebody like Luthen, who is on the same side, is one of the culprits, one of the people that's really, starting a lot of that paranoia, and it obviously gets worsens as he gets, by the time we get to Rogue One, is pretty fascinating.
Right.
So Saul has questions, this is where we talk about the paranoia. How does Luthen know? How does Krieger know? And at the end of the day, this whole conversation is really about the decision to allow Anto Krieger to fall. Right. And I think Luthen, he pulls out the blaster. He takes the blaster from TuTube, uses him and to kind of get his attention, because he's not listening. All right. It's very clear that he's he's kind of thinking he's going down his own path, and so he has to get his attention. But it's very clear that Luthen is doing whatever he can to ensure that Saul is not going to go through with this for all the reasons we just said. And I think he makes his argument valid, of course, because he says he's not to. But this is kind of the dirty deeds of the Rebel Alliance that we've seen before. We've talked about it many times before, but this is a pretty good example. They're going to allow 31 people to just die, and they have to die. There's too much risk by allowing them to live.
It was a really interesting conversation in that regard too, because you had, of all people, Saw is not the one you would put up there at the top of saying you're going to sacrifice 30 people, and then of course every time Luthen's like plus Krieger every single time. It wasn't just 30; it was 30 plus 1.
Yeah,
and Luthen's not. I think it showed Luthen's humanity is still there, that he understands what the loss means, and he wants to make sure every single person is counted in that number that's going to be lost. But of all people, you wouldn't expect Saw to be the one that would be concerned about it. And part of the question maybe I had for you is he really concerned about the loss of this team for the cause, or is it more of he really wants to do it at this point, and he's trying to kind of bully his way to say, are you really going to sacrifice 30 people, for this? Like, we can pull this off. And he's just being very short-sighted. And it goes back to Luthen's, statement last episode, of all of the, not looking to not having to live by long enough basically to see what the negative ramifications of his decisions are. He doesn't have to think about the consequences. I think time and time again, exactly true. He is thinking of the consequences. Sometimes you just don't have a better way of doing it, so you just have to accept the consequences. And this is one of those times where he's kind of stuck. If he were to choose between Anton Krieger and Saw Gerrera, it's when you look at the way that the cards are on the table, it's a no-brainer. And like you said, this is the only way he can get his attention, to say, look at this from take a step back and look at the dealer's hand on the table and just see what it is. Like, there's no winning here. If we go forward with this, we lose one way or the other. And the only way that we can do this is to sacrifice them and not let them know. And I think that's the part that Saw I think he may have had a moment of realization, or at least a moment of remembering that they're all expendable, and they're all expendable to Luthen, including him. And if he's not going to tell Krieger what he's doing here, at what point is Luthen going to set Saw up in the same situation of saying, yeah, we should definitely do this. And then at some point you back out, but you don't tell anybody, and you're just sacrificed for the greater good. Mm-hmm. Right. But I think Saw gets it though, to an extent. And once he sees that, right. And that's where he says for the greater good, because that's his way of accepting that you're right. There is no other way we can do this, but we won't let that loss go to waste. We won't let their loss be lost to memory. Like that will live with us, and so, for the greater good. And Luthen's like, I don't really care what you call it, because it's all sucky, and then Saw with the realistic nature as well. He's like, it's war, and let's just call it what it is. It's the hard decisions of war, to the point where I think Luthen doesn't always want to. Luthen understands and accepts that, but I think he has to remind himself of that too, because the losses just feel, and we're going to hear this from Cassian next episode. He's just kind of tired of losing certain things. And every time he loses 30 people or an Anton Krieger, he continues to lose more of himself in the process as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's really eating away at it again. He just seems so tired and just fatigued from the entire thing, but he knows there's no choice but to push forward.
Yeah, and I do take him at his argument is, if we allow them to take out Anto, then they will feel invincible. This plays into the overconfidence that, again, we've talked about many times, about it trickling down from the Emperor as being the weakness, right? He wants the Empire to feel like they're one step ahead of everybody else, when really that's not the case. If they intervene and they allow Anto to not fall, it does a couple things. One, it puts the doubt in the Empire's mind, and so they're going to start to really stamp down on internal people. And that, again, it's another exposure. It's another risk. Lonnie is and we got very solid confirmation in that conversation they had in the last episode. But Lonnie is such a risk to Luthen. He's such an exposed risk to Luthen that he can't allow Lonnie to leave. He can never leave because of, we broke that down in the last episode, right? But that's also the same. That's also true of Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera is such a solid lead to Luthen that Luthen has to protect these people. He either has to protect the people or not allow them to expose themselves in whatever way he has to. I think the only thing, the silver lining in all this is, I think from Saw Gerrera's perspective, at least the way Luthen sold this, is that, because he throws the question, what if it were me? What would you do? Right.
Right.
I think the answer is, I don't know that he would ever allow that to happen to Saw Gerrera, because this is clearly what's happening right now. Because he uses it almost as a counter to, like, I'm not ISB, otherwise I would have just let you fall. Right. Yeah, that's probably true. But really, it's more about that protection aspect, right? It's protecting his own investment here, in that risk that Saw Gerrera exposes. But
well, I think at some point, though, and this has been more speculative, but I think at some point Luthen's willing to sacrifice Saw because he knows that Saw's usefulness will expire at some point. Because when you win or when you get close to winning, Saw doesn't stop, right? He keeps going because there's always something that he has to have something to live for and live by, and if he survives it all. So I think Saw gets that, though, that there's that aspect of it with Luthen, that at some point he will turn on me because he has to.
Yeah, right, for the greater good. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think he comes across as, okay, he gets it. He's adhering to the vow, right? He understands that this is for the mission, and all this plays into what we see in Rogue One. The only part of that is probably not true is I just can't see how Luthen would allow Saul to fall unless he had 100% positive. Like, it had to be a very calculated loss for Luthen. You know what I'm saying? Like, it had to be like a no-win situation. There's no way he was going to get out of this. There's no way he would have been captured. I think that and only then would he allow it to happen. I think otherwise he's going to intervene and try to stop it, much like he did right now. That could change, later down the road, but I think that's kind of where Luthen's head is, at least right now. But okay, so let's get to the Segra Milo space scene. He's closed the deal. Saul's not going to go through with it all. They're going to allow Anto to kind of fall. He has that conversation with Clea, and they're talking in these coy terms, like as though they're, wheeling and dealing in artifacts and all that. It was kind of creative in terms of the way they did it. They mentioned that the other piece, we lose that and we'll have to close up shop, meaning that other piece is Andor, right? If Andor falls, then this whole thing's over with, because they suddenly know who Axis is, and it's all going to come back to me, right? He said it's a crowded market, too many people in interest there already. So speaking to the number of people, the Empire's presence, as well as other presences that they may or may not be aware of, like Cinta or, Cyril, although he doesn't know what Cyril's going on there. But there's a lot of people that are interested in Andor for one reason or another. And then he talks about the consequences of losing that piece to another buyer, meaning if the Empire gets them, again, there's the risk that comes with that. So all that is interesting. Never once in there did Clea actually mention or say specifically that, and I don't know how she would have done this, given the terms that they were using, but she never relayed to him that Andor's mother had passed. But I think it was pretty clear from Luthen's perspective that he needed to get to Andor. He needed to kind of lock that up and secure him and get him back in some way.
Yeah, but he doesn't know that he's not in prison, I guess, and doesn't know where he is at this point. So I guess, again, why would he go to Ferrix, I guess, at this point, Luthen? Unless it was just to go and check for himself. Maybe. Yeah,
I get that. And I'm with you too. Like, I think they were trying to say, well, here's the question. Do you think Luthen is going to Ferrix?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, there's a part of me that does, because I still think he dies. But I mean, but why, I guess, unless he just had a feeling and wanted to go there and look for himself what was going on. But again, he pointed out pretty clearly that there's too much going on at Ferrix for him to show up. You talk about putting yourself at risk. I mean, you just step into the lion's den at that point. You might as well just go down to, go to Coruscant and start walking around and parading yourself around the Senate, chambers or something like that.
Yeah.
and touting who you are, but hanging out with Mon Mothma. So I don't know that he has a reason, but again, Luthen's not always thinking really clearly when it comes to Cassian Andor, though. And I think right now we're actually a little bit unclear about how he feels about Andor, because we know that Clea thinks he's a problem that needs to be just eliminated and taken off the board. But, Luthen has a bit invested in him, maybe not financially or time-wise, but he definitely has a lot of commitment in Andor and belief in there. And so he has that kind of personal investment in him for some reason. And so that could be a reason enough to go there and figure it out. Again, he's got sources everywhere too, so that he would learn that, his mother passed away. It isn't beyond the realm of possibility either, and would make sense that he would find that information out one way or another.
Yeah, I think Clea has to tell. Like, I get it. This is what I was struggling with. Is like, I think he's going there based on the conversation, but I still don't really get what the motivation is, other than he has just been out there for now. What? How long has it been? 45 days, or I don't know. Somewhere around. It hasn't been that long. Longer than that probably, but he's been out there in the wild for some time, and they don't know where he's at, right? Because that's what Cinta's doing. She's supposed to be, staking out Marva's location. So in his regard, he's just a risk that he has no control over. He has no idea where he's at. So until Clea tells him, I can't see why he would go to Ferrix.
Well, and again, we revisit this conversation real quick just to see if perspectives have changed. Who sent Cinta?
Yeah. So
does
it was
Luthen
Clea.
know? Yeah. Does Luthen know that Cinta was put on this mission?
Mm-hmm.
Because she's there to kill Cassian Andor. There's no capture. There's no recon. Her job is that Clea gave her mission wise is to eliminate him. And so I'm assuming that Luthen does not know that part of the plan, and hasn't asked what Cinta is up to. At least that's kind of the impression I'm given. Is that where you're at too, or?
Yeah, well, so following that too, I think what I think is the logical conclusion. I would expect Clea not to tell Luthen, because if she tells Luthen, then he's gonna swoop in, save him, and that risk is still out there, which she's not happy with, right? If she says nothing, then I don't know. This is good writing, because now I'm sitting here. I'm questioning like all the ins, the possibilities and what's right, what's wrong, and I'm starting to not really get a good sense of what I would do in this situation. It's a win. It's a no-win situation, because if she doesn't, then Andor. Well, no. Okay, so here's where I would go. If she says nothing, Andor shows up in her mind. Andor shows up to Ferrix and kills him. Story's over. I think that's what she's banking on.
Right.
Right. But if she tells him, then he's going to swoop in and, one, probably save him, but two, maybe find out that Clea had Cinta sent to kill him, which, how would he feel about that, knowing what we know, how he feels about Andor? Now he sought him out personally, and, that's not going to go well with him. So Clea's playing all kinds of crap here in this situation.
She's playing an interesting game. It's, they're all on the same side, we think. It seems like they all are, but the paths they're willing to take are not always the same ones. Yeah.
Well, I would like to see Luthen go to Ferrix, just personally. I know that's selfish. I mean, his story just kind of ends. I don't know that we see him.
And that's the hard part when he makes his escape. I mean, now he's had a run-in with the Empire directly. Mm-hmm. His ship presumably would be scanned and logged, even though he had a fake transcoder, number or ID. Still, they would have taken a snapshot of it, and it would be reported, and they're going to an Imperial installation in Ferrix, right? So, yeah, he could probably get in a bit undetected and land and do what he's done before, but
yeah,
I mean, at some point that breaks down, right?
Yeah, and it's super risky.
Yeah, exactly. You're taking chances he's been averse to taking in the past, but now he's getting sloppy, and I think this is the trend. But again, is he being sloppy because of Andor, which is, of course, Clea's whole perspective anyway? I think she's protecting him by trying to take out Cassian and make sure that that's not a distraction for him going forward.
I just want to go to the comments quickly. Sorry, I know we haven't been intentionally dismissing the comments. It's just we've got a lot to talk about here. But Dale said, I can see the imps leaving as Cyril shows up. Cinta might leave as well. Vel will show up expecting to see Cinta. she'll find Cassian and end up helping him escape. So that's another possibility I'd not considered.
Yeah, I don't know that the Imperials will leave because I mean they've been ramping up this entire time and they're asserting their influence on this backwater planet. So that
Yeah,
would be
well, and
it would be interesting why they would leave. Yeah,
I mean they're not leaving until they have Cassian Andor. I mean,
right.
Dedra's going to see to that at this point. That's why.
Well, until they have access. Yeah, until they have
or
access.
access really. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Or, one leads to the other. So I don't think they're leaving now. In this scene, this is when we get the disruption in communication, which can only mean one thing: invasion. But yeah, so we get his communications interrupted. This whole conversation that he's having with Clea, and we get this guy Elk. I didn't get the chance to look at his in the credits. I didn't see if they had listed his rank, and I didn't look at the insignia. But whatever he is on this. What was it? The arrestor cruiser, the Cantwell class, and so we'd be remiss by not mentioning that this is the original design for the Star Destroyer. For anybody that doesn't know, this was created by what was his first name? Was it
Ed?
Ed Cantwell?
Yeah, I think it's Ed Cantwell.
I only knew it ever as Cantwell, honestly. But Ed Cantwell is the one that came up with the design of this ship originally, concept art, along with what was it, like the X-wing, the Y-wing. Many of the ships that we see in Star Wars all originated with this gentleman's design. He just passed away this year too, earlier in the year. But I know this particular ship was seen in, was it Solo? It was in a cutscene or a deleted scene in Solo. They had used it. It was in the background. You could see it. It never made it on, but this was the official, like, first appearance debut of the original Star Destroyer type design.
Colin Cantwell.
Colin Cantwell. Thank you.
Yeah, my apologies. Yeah.
Okay. No, you're good. You're good. You at least took a shot at it.
I think I'm thinking of Ed, the digital designer, who's got a somewhat similar name. Anyway,
but
here or there.
But no, that was cool, and the fact that it had these, they called it the arrestor cruiser, and they called it a Cantwell class. So paying homage and tribute to him in the episode directly and canonically is pretty dang freaking sweet. But it is kind of cool. I mean, you can see the original design. I mean, you think about the opening scene of A New Hope and that Star Destroyer come in, and we never really see the tractor beam. It's just kind of there, which I think is part of the wizardry of Lucas and the fact they didn't have a budget. But you see this design with these satellite dishes or whatever they are on the front, and you can kind of see where that is what's pulling them in, and that's exactly how they use it in this particular case.
It's pretty clever how we got out of it, though. I like that he had them up. Yeah.
Tell me your theory on this, because I have I have in my own head this like scientific way of how this all worked based on what he was saying, but I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I don't know if anybody's actually really kind of broken this down.
Well, the way I took it though is he was up in the power on his ship, and his ship's clearly got more power than what the Empire expected, right? Because there was this jolt when he did fire up the engines, but I think that was the intent, right? They focus more power on them because he's getting the readout from the Fondor as well, is about what they're tracking, which tractor beam they're locking on and which phase it is, or whatever the term was. And I think that was to increase potential velocity of what the countermeasures he was going to release behind him.
Yes.
So that they did hit with a lot more impact and a lot more damage, right?
Yes.
Because if it was just to keep something in place, you don't have to pull very hard on something like that. Now, science and everything notwithstanding, because a lot of this stuff doesn't really work this way, because you have to basically create artificial gravity in order for these things to actually work. But, you'd have velocity to do this type of thing. But with the ship and with the power, and you could even say the thrusters maybe were creating some thrust behind them as well. It made for a very effective, and I like it though. It was clever. It's like using space junk, but whatever countermeasures are. I don't know who has metal countermeasures in a starship, but okay. Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, the science of it is, the science really is not important, although it makes for a good discussion and conversation, but that's how I interpret it. He overcompensated the pull, right, by increasing the thruster velocity, which I love the fact that it tugged on that ship, because it just speaks to this ship is freaking awesome. It's got so many cool things on it, and it's got so many. It's so clever in terms of what it can do, right? But he accelerates So then the Empire, as a reaction, has to overcompensate the amount of pull of whatever that is with the tractor beam. And then I'm thinking in the right moment, right when those two converge, is when he releases those missiles so that it pulls the missiles in, or whatever that the debris. Maybe they're mines. Maybe they're like
projectiles at the end of the day, whatever they were,
whatever it is. But it pulls it into the dish and disrupts the tractor beam altogether. So on paper and visually, I think it works really well. I think, like, you're right. If we get into it, then you might as well just tear apart everything else about Star Wars, which we're not going to do because there's so many things that we just have to accept as Star Wars science, and it looks visually cool. And that ship is a badass ship because it was able to do that.
And it was cool. It was different than like just shooting at it, right? I mean, I guess technically you could have shot at it, but would they have been as effective because you can enemy shots off or whatever it might be? Why he chose that over the other one, or maybe if you pop your turret out, it gets ripped off. I don't know. Star Wars is crazy sometimes.
It is kind of crazy. But then on top of that, I mean, we get this whole, where he's like, where's my wings? Now, the fact that they released 3 TIE fighters makes sense. What in the world are they doing launching a B-wing or a bomber?
A TIE bomber?
I
don't know. No, that was even funnier though. That was the first one he took out, which again was the head scratcher of why am I taking out these? Now, it's usually the most heavily armored, but it's the slowest one in the fleet. It's meant for bombing stationary targets on on the ground.
On the ground or a surface of some sort.
I don't know. Didn't they do this in Solo too? Didn't they have they had TIE fighters and TIE bombers chasing the Falcon and whatnot?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't. Maybe the Empire's just really proud of this design. They're like, you know what? We've got this cool thing. There's 2 ports on this thing. It's a beast. It's a tank. Well, you got to have a tank. You got to have a tank, and you got your DPS.
Right.
They just forgot. They forgot the healer.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
As usual, the healer went AFK.
Visually, it was cool. Don't get me wrong. I love seeing it. There's stuff right now chiming in because it looked cool, and that's exactly what it is. It looked cool seeing 3 TIE fighters and a TIE bomber all dispersed at the same time. Don't get me wrong. I totally get that, but pragmatically, I don't understand why you released the TIE bomber unless it was just kind of a a contingency of sorts. If he headed down to the surface and parked it, I don't know what was going on, but either way, I mean, that was the first one to go. The targeting system I thought was pretty awesome. It was kind of like it looked like a tricked out, upgraded version of the one that we had in the Falcon, like a more modern UI, which would make sense given the, even though this takes place before that, the Fondor has some pretty advanced technology in it. So I think that all pretty much made sense for me. And then of course so we talked about this on what episode was it? We were talking about these particular lightsaber blades that come out, and are they lightsaber blades? I don't know what else to call them, but I mean, it's so like I don't know what else you would call it in Star Wars. Like when you see something like that and the way it extends and it is finite in terms of its length, you would have to think it's powered by Kyber in some way, which, who the hell has this tech outside of somebody who's, again, somebody who goes out and has all these ancient artifacts, because this is crap that I would expect to see during the High Republic era or even prior to, not during the era of the prequels.
Right. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Every time we've seen a steady beam that wasn't just laser fire, I think it's been Kyber based. The Death Star, what we saw in Rise of Skywalker, what we've seen, of course, lightsabers in general, what we've read on the page for High Republic. I mean, these things seem like that's how you get that sustained energy. Otherwise, it's just a burst, right? Mm-hmm. And the only way you can do that is to channel something through, a focusing crystal and a power crystal to get that kind of power. And for that kind of destructive ability, it sure seems it. But I mean, then again, why is it red? Did he go bleed it? And why do you have 2 of them? And they're very large. I mean, there's a lot of questions that go with all of that. If it was Kyber, it was, okay, is this a different type of Kyber? Like we have Sky Kyber right now, but, is this something else? Because a red Kyber has meaning. And to have multiples of those, especially with that kind of power, is pretty considerable and pretty notable, and would probably catch the eyes of some fairly high-ranking Imperial folks if you're catching my drift.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't have there's no doubt in my mind that Vader will not appear in this series. Okay. and I could be wrong, and hopefully maybe I am wrong, and that's fine. But I just don't see him appearing. But I do think when Elk, this gentleman, files his report, if he files the report, I think he's going. If that seems like you said, it's very notable that a ship like this even exists, because we just don't see this tech out there. And if it turns out to be Kyber, now also to keep in mind that Kyber has to be pretty thick. Like we don't.
Oh, they have to be
scale
huge.
Is lost, right? Because it's a ship. But to be able to cut 2 TIE fighters the way, we're talking massive in terms of its diameter.
It's got to be at least the size of a dinner plate. I mean, right? Something like that.
Exactly.
And you know what? Maybe this is the crossover that everybody's always wanted, where Star Wars has adopted Star Trek phaser technology.
That's exactly what it is. It's phaser tech in some way.
Not
Dilithium
lasers.
crystals. They're introducing dilithium crystals into Star Wars.
Right. It's not lasers, not sabers, it's phasers. So
maybe. I don't know.
Gene Roddenberry is rolling over his grave.
Yeah, so are a lot of our fans and listeners right now. But I don't know. So this is, when I see this stuff again, it just kind of goes back to what I was saying. If he's not, I'm not saying he's a Jedi, but he definitely, I love this. I love the idea of a character being out there that has access to this old tech, all this really super ancient tech, and as well as the more modern tech, right? He's just a really different breed of character that we've never had, if that turns out to be the case. And I don't want him to invoke Jedi or the Force or any of that stuff, but just somebody who's a normal person. He's almost like the Batman. Like he's the Star Wars Batman, where he's got a ton of money.
Yeah.
He's got access to all the latest toys and tools, but then he does his research and he's grounded in history and he's using that as well at his disposal. Just a really awesome character if that actually turns out to be the case.
That's actually a really good comparison. I like that.
Yeah.
Well done, sir.
It's not in the notes. It just came to me right now. Okay. So I think the last part I want to say on this was just that shot. I want to get a screenshot of like that reflection of Elk and like the two. You can see the 2 explosions right there, and like there's the other one off on the left hand side, and you can just see his face. And it was perfect to see Elk just shake his head like, son of a gun, like.
Oh no, it's Stephanie. I watched it, and we were at a turn. I was like, yeah, he's definitely got that. What WTF just happened in this moment? Look. Like of just disbelief, because you can even see him. I think he shakes his head like, what was that? You know, I've never seen anything like that in my whole 4 years of service in the Empire, because this guy looks like he's about 12, but maybe not 12. But
so hey, look I wanted to say this too. I forgot that Gary just brought something. He said that ship could be an artifact like the wares in his shop. So I kind of went down this path originally, or as well, when I saw this. What I saw, or when I see this ship, not to evoke the Old Republic, but in SWTOR, the one of the ships, and it's one of the, I think it's the Sith Inquisitor ship or the Sith Assassin ship, I forget now. One of them looks very similar in design. I wanted to bring an image up. If you put them side by side, they look very similar. They're not identical in any ways, but I started thinking, well, maybe he's got like he's taken an old Sith kind of ship like that, and he's modernized it and, did all that stuff to it. But then the only thing that, to poke holes in that theory for myself, they all seem to, they keep calling this, what was that, a Hall class, or what was it?
Hauler.
What was the name? I wrote it down in here somewhere, but because he even calls them out, like Elk calls them out by it. He says he calls them a Hall class, or, all right, whatever it is. You've got it. Go ahead and throw it up there if you don't mind. So yeah, there you go. No, not identical.
No, not identical, but definitely in the style. You could definitely where they got some inspiration from at the very least. But it's similar though.
What was it? Is it a Sith? Which class does it say on there? Wherever you pulled it up at?
Fury. They call it a Fury class,
yes.
Imperial Interceptor. So they don't really. You keep talking, I'll figure it out.
Well, Steph just said not to bring up SWTOR, because I think that happens every episode.
Yes.
So anyway, so
utilized prominent by Sith warriors and Sith Inquisitors. So
there you go. Okay. So I was half right. I think it was one of them, but the point is, I kind of went down that path, but it does seem like they look at this ship, everybody, including the Imperials, look at this and go, oh, that's just a normal Hall class. Like Andor says it himself, I think, or someone says it, like, I've never seen this kind of a, I mean, paraphrasing here, but somebody mentions they've never seen that kind of a tech in this ship,
Right.
like in that first episode or second episode. So probably not the case.
Yep.
All right. That's a dead horse. Let's move on to the next dead horse or living horse that we will put down here in just a second. Let's talk about the final piece, which is Andor. And this one's pretty quick because it does rip through a few scenes very quickly. It actually opens with them all just hanging around, no pun intended, on the rock ledges there. We switch over to Marva's home, and this is where this one really punched me in the heart, in the nuts. I mean,
I don't
B2,
think those are in the same place.
and it's a big punch. But B2, like, I love the fact that Star Wars continues to do an amazing job of humanizing droids and making us, empathize and sympathize with characters that, technically don't have any life in them. And
yeah, he's experienced significant grief. Yeah.
he was going through it. Like, you could see it. And kudos to the actor, because, I mean, up until now, he's just been kind of like this Eeyore character. I mean, he's even called B2 emo, right? So, but this one, I really you kind of felt the voice acting in this. And a lot of it was the writing too. I don't want to be alone. When he's stuttering that, I'm like, dude, bro, same. I don't want to be alone. And then later on, he's like, can't you just stay with me for the night, when he's reaching out to Brasso. But you can feel like this guy, he's like we talked about it, he's kind of like the family dog, and, mom's passed away and he's going through these stages of grief and just wants to be with somebody. But I mean, the droid steals the show. And I know, and I'll let you speak here, but prior to this series coming out, they were talking so much about this droid and B2 and how incredible he was and that sort of thing. And I just hadn't really seen it. I mean, he's been a cool droid, but I hadn't seen it. But this, for me, this particular scene, was like, okay, I get it. That's why everybody was really talking about and touting, B2 prior to the show starting.
Well, I think at least as a character, maybe of sorts, I'd be curious to see if he gets involved in some other meaningful way this next episode. Because you're right, he's been very much on the side, and that makes sense. But you're right, Dave Chapman's performance for B2 and the stutter just adds a little something to it as well, right? Especially when you, excuse me, when you hear the sadness in the voice come across as to, he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want Brasso to leave. He feels like it's one of those things of, like, when you go through this grief, you just feel like you're waiting to hear their voice again. You're waiting for them to step through the door, especially if it's sudden and it's tragic, right? It just, that disbelief, until you're able to finally accept that, they're gone. But it's heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking. But it's how we would react in the same situation, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to stay here and watch it. Well, you've been sitting there all day, type of thing. It was just a very different conversation, but the droid was charging. So it was just.
Well, and he said he's been charging all day. He wasn't charging. He was sulking. Like, he was.
No, exactly. Yeah. He's just depressed. Yeah. I mean, but you can correlate those conversations to things that we would have if someone were to come over and say, well, no, I'm just going to stay here and rest, and do this or that. Well, no, you've been doing it all day. It's time to get some sunshine. Let's get out and about a little bit.
Yeah, the lights are out. The covers are, the blinds are pulled. The curtains are pulled, or sitting in darkness and moping around. And then he, once he says he'll stay, like, he pops out of that charger and, like, runs immediately over to Brasso, because he knows he's got something to do with that night. Right, big old hug. I did enjoy the eyeball thing. Like, when they showed, it opens with that eye, like, through the lens, almost through the eye of him, which I thought was interesting because it did look human. I think it's at one point.
I think the actual opening shot is through the cup, not through his eye, but I think it was actually through the cup. Because it was watery. It was like there was a cup of water or something, or a liquid on top of him. Yeah,
okay, I have to go back and watch that. I missed that then. Because at first I thought it was Marva, like we were hearing Marva's last, or seeing through Marva's eyes closed, right, in her final moments. But then it cuts to B2, and I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe this is just through his little optical receptor of some sort.
Right. Yeah, I don't think so. I'm gonna pull it up here and we'll just take a quick peek while you're talking here.
Okay, so that was where were we at here? So I want to talk about Marva, because then we haven't really I know you guys had a conversation when I bowed out, but the whether Marva's alive or I think she's dead. I think it very, very interesting to think that she could be alive, or it's being staged in some way. But they've been signaling this over the last couple episodes that something was happening to her. So I was just surprised that she passed in this particular manner. I thought we were going to see this on screen, but I don't know if you pulled it up yet. I do want to get into some thoughts about how her death can still impact Andor more than we've already seen, though.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Okay. So in this scene, this is where he starts to get a little like upset. And you can see it's the actual liquid in the glass going crazy, the cup. But it does
the
look
cup
like
on his head.
Yeah, on his head. But it did look like it was, because I kept lingering it on this shot right here, right?
Yeah.
And it was very fuzzy. It almost looked like an iris, right?
Yeah, it looked like eyelashes kind of covering too. Like
it did, like your eyes were watering, like you were going to cry. So it was it was a very interesting scene, like the way it was shot. But it was actually through the cup, because when he starts getting excitable, you see the water splashing around and stuff on the top or whatever.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, we got to the bottom of that. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about Marva's death, because she does get I would say a mini procession. Like I was getting shades of like Padme, and prior to them, like when I was watching the episode,
this isn't the funeral though. Yeah, and this isn't the funeral or anything like that.
Well, no, and it's not. They're just they're parading her through the city, right? I mean, they put her on that bed, and they've got they're
just moving the
ceremonial stuff on her. I'm assuming this is the daughters of Ferrix have some kind of a ritual or ceremony that they go through.
Right.
I mean, they didn't just throw her in a body bag, zip it up into a black bag, and they rolled her out. I mean, she had flowers on there and some other stuff,
They threw a branch on her instead.
Yeah, right. They burned her on a pyre like Luke did with his dad so lovingly. I never really understood that. Okay. So they're walking her, they kind of parade her out, and people do gather, right? And there's kind of some reverence that's going on because of, it's her and she's passed. But then they cut to, what are you pulling up here?
It's just her in the gurney.
Oh yeah. And
so people could see, yeah. Oh, you can't see my mouse on the screen, but you can see where they've laid twigs and stuff on her, the branches. Yeah.
It was a Life Day blanket.
I'm not acknowledging that comment.
Okay. So when I first saw the scene, I thought, oh, okay, so maybe, they've got she said they've got 2 days. Dedra, they tell Dedra they've got 2 days to kind of mourn her loss or whatever, before, which I think is what the way I understood is before they make her a brick, which we'll have another conversation about. But I thought, well, maybe what would happen then is, okay, assuming that her body is still intact and she's not been turned into a brick, there's some scene in this next episode where, they're parading her through the city and everybody's kind of coming together, and there's a moment there where something could happen that sets off Cassian Andor, right? Because they're allowing this to happen only to snuff him out, right? But if things go south, like if once they identify him or whatever, and they call the procession off, or something happens, or somebody's disrespectful to her during all this, I can see where a riot would suddenly start, right? This insurrection suddenly kind of manifests there. And God forbid, I mean, this sounds horrible, and I hate to say this, I'm blaming it on the hat again, so I apologize, Lauren, just cover your ears. But I wonder if how horrible and how I don't know, awful, there's a word I'm looking for, but would it be to see her body fall off and it's, what I'm saying? Something really bad happens to her body, because if Cassian was witness to that, where things started happening, everybody's running, the body falls off, or there's an explosion, or whatever it is. I mean, that's, I don't want to say desecration, but that would be pretty impactful to see your mom just being used. They're using your mother's dead body as a way to get you out. How they play that out, I don't know, but I think that would be a way to really set them off.
Yeah, I'm going to put your mind at ease. So what they explained to us is that the 2-day process is a period of mourning for someone of her stature in the community, but also they are going through the cremation process. So they cremate her, and then they put her into this mixture that then goes into the brick, and then the brick is another brick in the wall. Did I really?
Hey, Pink Floyd.
Yeah, maybe that's what I should have done. Another brick in the wall.
Another brick in the wall. Oh, by the way, I want to shout out to, I got to shout out to, what was the guy on Twitter? Was it Greg? I have to pull it up on the Cantina Cast Twitter account. He said, he quoted Starship's we built this city. We built this city on Andor's mom. And I was singing that like, we built this city on Andor's mom. But I apologize for that. But I thought it was hilarious. Okay, go on though. What were you saying?
I feel like I'm back in Billy Madison now, where like I think we are all dumber for having heard. But no, we appreciate the Twitter website.
I'm gonna pull it up. Hold on, go on, keep going though.
But I think so. The process though is that she's interred, of course, through this process, which is kind of a preliminary. I don't know if it's like a viewing almost of or whatever this process is. But then she's cremated, and then she's put into a mixture that goes into the brick, which then goes into the wall. Right. Now, what I think the part that's setting it off, and I understand where you're going, that would be pretty messed up, like to desecrate the body before some of those things happen. But I think it's still a hotbed of activity and something that could really happen if something happens to that brick. Or again, they're going to close Rick's Road, right? And this is where Clem was killed and where he was hung and where she avoided Rick's Road for so long. So there's a lot of history just within this one road, and for them to call out Rick's Road specifically, which seems like Main Street for them, I think is really kind of what it is how I'm gathering it. So there's a lot of history there for Marva's character anyway, and with Andor. And for someone to maybe have a speech and bring Clem up, and you can see where that would escalate really potentially very quickly, right?
Yes. Yeah. And the other theory I had is if at some point they don't, if they just cut, if that never happens, that's fine. Right. And we get to the point where she's now a brick. The fact that like, I'm looking around now at this, like there's something creepy about it in my opinion. And that's just me personally. Like I think it's fascinating in terms of what they do as a culture, right? As a people. Well, but there's just something really weird.
That it's your ashes and not just a remembrance brick, right? There's something, but it's like Kiss in the comic book. They put their blood in the ink for the comic book, so they could be a part of it, right? There's a certain coolness to it, but you're right. There's a certain creepy factor to it as well.
Yeah, like necromantic in some way.
A little bit, but it's also very reverent, right? And I mean, and when you're cremated, I mean, you're a pretty fine material. You're just a little bag. For those that don't know, when you're cremated, you really come like a bag like this size. That's all you amount to when you're cremated, is basically a quart size bag of gray stuff. Try the gray stuff.
It's delicious. Don't believe me? Ask the dishes. No, sorry, that was
wow. We're doing some weird stuff tonight.
Sorry about that. Derek Brown is the one who said we built this city on Andor's mom. So thanks, Derek. I did find that one hilarious.
That's a brand new type of mom joke. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah,
did not see that one coming.
I know.
I like it.
Somebody already photoshopped the Marva Black Series figure, and it's literally a brick within the same packaging of the Black Series. Have you seen that? I mean, it didn't take them long to do this stuff. So I know we're joking about someone's death, but she's fictional, so get over it. Okay, so. But going back to the brick piece of it, like I went back and watched some of the other scenes now, like the first couple 3 episodes, because I'm thinking, wow, like, how many dead people are in these buildings, and like, what's that process like? Like, where do you get to pick the building? Is there just a building where all the bricks are? Do they just keep adding to it? There's that one scene where when Andor and them are escaping, I'm thinking now every time there's do they not tear this stuff down? Like, my mind went a ton of places, but the point of that was, at some point, yes, you're right. Like if they start desecrating, even if it's an explosion or if it's minor or something, and they hit one of these walls or buildings, like it's such a hotbed, like you said, it's going to trigger somebody that there's going to be an uprising. The tension is so high right now that any one of these types of things is going to lead to some of the scenes that we've not seen yet, where we know the people are revolting at Ferrix. They've had enough of the Empire.
I think the other interesting part is how many people knew what Marva was kind of getting herself into and was up to after the Aldani event. How many people know that she branded herself as a rebel? I'm assuming probably many, actually, because these communities seem really tight. They all seem to be in everyone's business in some form or fashion. Mm-hmm. And none of them like the Empire's presence, especially the amount of oppression and stuff that's going on right now.
That's true. That's probably the case. And maybe they allowed Marva to have her. It's so similar. Like Marva in that situation is similar to in a lot of ways, to similar to where Cassian was in the prison, which is similar to where Mon Mothma is currently in the Senate. Right, there are distractions. How much do they allow them to continue doing? I think it's the same situation as the prison, though, where they can't really do a whole lot. I mean, she's old, she's frail, she's a very prominent person in the community, and they know if they don't treat this the right way, they're outnumbered. Right, that's the reality of it. And unless more forces show up, they're going to be outnumbered, and these people of Ferrix can take down the Empire. So they got to kind of play it safe in that regard with what they do and how they react.
It's a good point. We don't really know what the Force looks like there for the Empire. We know they built it up quite a bit, but we don't know what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
From some of the scenes that we've seen in the trailers, it seems like that there's still, you're right. It seems like it's not enough. But then again, they're pretty well trained, and enough of them will wipe out with blasters and everything pretty quickly. But
yep.
Yeah, we'll have to see where this goes. Yeah, but I'm really curious, what wall is this wall? Have we seen it anywhere, or is this going to be something new that we see, or did we get to see it at all, I guess? But I imagine we will see it. There's got to be some reason for all of this.
I like Dell's theories. It's the tower with the Beskar anvil?
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
I mean, who knows? That seems. I mean, there seems to be something about that tower. I mean, that dude finally got to see the
time
tower ringer. Yep. So there's something about the tower. So there's some significance of it. So maybe. All right. So going on with the Andor scenes, we get that scene quickly of the quad jumper, which of course is a reference to the Force Awakens. We all saw that come in, and but it was interesting that well, was excuse me, I was trying to come right that Melchi was wanting to get out of there, and that kind of led to them not really thinking through the plan. I think Andor wanted some more time, to get caught in the net. I thought immediately, are you a fish or are you a thief, Andor? That kind of that scene again with Deidre.
That was kind of a cool net, though. It was very spiderwebby and sticky and gooey, and
yeah,
I like the two Narkesians though.
I did too.
Narkinians, whatever they were. Yeah,
yeah. I like the way they talk. I like their look. The one with the knife hand was a little weird. Like, it didn't look as lifelike. It looked like somebody in a costume. But I mean, I'm not. So did half the other characters in Star Wars, to be honest.
Yeah.
Honestly. Okay, let's. We've already talked a little bit about this, but we do get that scene with Deidre. Tigo reports that Marv has passed, and he's like, "We're not going to let them have that funeral procession or whatever, pay their respects." And she's like, "No, let them do this. Let them feel like they're in control. Give them what they want." And she's doing all this, of course, because she knows Andor's going to be.
But keep it small, right? So she wants to keep it under control, so it's still manageable. Because again, it goes back to also keeping up that look that you aren't acting differently. Even though you give them a little bit of leeway because she was such a prominent figure in the community, you still tamp that way down so that you can keep eyes on everything and you can't get lost in the crowd.
Yeah. She says keep it small, limit the time, limit the numbers.
Right.
So make them feel like they're getting what they want, even though we still are, in control.
It's
here.
to their ends, right? Yeah, not the community's, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, become a block of Ferrix brick. Okay, we already talked about that, and yeah, I don't know that's weird. Okay, back to the lake scene. We learned there's $1,000 bounty out for the prisoners there on Arkina 5, but it is kind of cool that these guys are. What's that?
Alive or dead?
Yeah, alive or dead. Right, it's either or. Probably preferably dead, since there's again, because they're probably going to die anyway, since they already. Zap the other people.
Do the job for them.
Yep. And in the end, these guys they side with Andor and them because I guess he does enough to convince them that, look, we're not the Empire. We were the prisoners. And for them, it's like, you know what? Screw you. F the Empire. They took away our fishing business, and I'm not going to, they're basically giving them the finger and let them leave. Not only let them leave, they empower them by taking them to Neomos, or what was it?
Neomos.
Yeah, Neomos. So it was kind of cool. I mean, that's the way they get off. Seemed convenient, seemed quick, but it's fine. It works. We go back to Marva's home. This is where we see Corv and the Timekeeper. We get the whole Blasso conversation, saying that, she's in the stone now is what he says. And then that's when he says you could stay. And that was a line that threw me off. Like, he's telling be too that she's in the stone now, and I get maybe he was speaking that she's going through the process and not literally the stone because that would have been really fast, or either that or we had time that jumped and they weren't very explicit about it.
I interpret it as that she's on her way. That's I mean because I think he even said that she's on. Did he say that specifically? She's on her way, or something like that.
I don't remember if that was said or not, but it's not important. I get it though. Okay, so as we discussed in the last episode, with Bix, she's not doing well. Like this is exactly what we talked about in the Patreon episode when Andrea was talking about her character and that she was kind of more like a child now. She used to be in control. She was an adult, and by the time we see her, she wanted to play this part as though she was incapable of taking care of herself. I mean, she couldn't even walk to wherever it was they were going to take her to try to identify Axis. And they got, I mean, it almost feels like they did too much. Like they went too far. Gorsh went too far. Like they're not, I don't know if she ever does confirm that that's not Axis. That's not Luthen. We don't ever know because it just that shot holds on her face, and she's a vegetable in a lot of ways. I hate to say that, use that term, but that's exactly what they did. I mean, they've given her a lobotomy of sorts through just this kind of psychological audio torture that they did.
It's incredible. I mean, and you don't even recognize her, and that's why I used the image for the title card was her with the shadow, right? You just have the shadow, the darkness around her. It's still like her profile is still very much there. Mm-hmm. But when you see her sit down in the light, you're like, oh my gosh.
She looks dead, like dying, I mean, like physically dying.
I mean, she's starting to show like signs of in some way. She's very pasty. Her skin's very dry. You could tell that she's malnourished. I mean, and just completely, we can't tell. And what was really interesting though was when they show her Krieger's image, you start and they're like, is this the man? Is this your buyer? And you're going through, you can just see what's going through her mind. She knows the answer is no, but she's so terrified of going through more of it. Or I guess another way of it is that, is she even able to formulate enough of a response to get it out? Or is she really just, because he's like, I know you're going to lie to me. If you lie to me, I'm going to call our old buddy, Dr. Gorst here, and we'll bring him in and see if we can get this sorted. So is it that she's just torn between answering the right way that he would know that she was lying? Or does she know that it doesn't matter if she's lying or not? They're going to kind of torture her anyway. That's another perspective.
Yeah, that's another way. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I kind of went with the first one, the more basic in your face of she's just so fried that she can't even process a thought, much less, put a sentence together or put a few words together. She's just, they gave her too much juice.
Yeah. And I think I'm leaning more towards that she wants to lie, but she is so terrified of lying at this point.
Yeah.
And she knows it's not him, but she's also in her head like, well, how would they know the difference? They wouldn't know the difference. They have someone and they apparently think it's him. So if I say yes, but again, all of these thoughts are jumbled in her head at the same time. And she's so conflicted about what is she even maybe capable of doing. And like you said, she's so fried that formulating all of these in anything kind of coherent is probably at best exceptionally difficult, if impossible at this point. But she still has that just reaction, that internal reaction, that fight or flight type of response to your body of when you're presented with something and you want to say something not truthful, but you are so terrified of the consequences that you don't know if you can, and then you're just doing it to yourself at that point. And
yeah,
they clearly got their way. Yeah, they clearly got their way so far with her. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the Patreon episode, we'll explore this a little bit further about whether or not she tells them the truth, or can she first? But if she does she lie, or does she tell the truth? Yeah, she looked really awful. Like she looked like she had scurvy, like she needed vitamin C or something as well. Okay. We get back to Niamos, and this is where Andor goes back to that locker box or whatever it was, that locker that he stored up on the top there. There's Blaster, his credits, and then we got I took a screenshot. I never had time to go back and try to translate it. But you hear Nimic's voice when he opens that little data pad or whatever it is, and it's him, reciting some lines from the manifesto. But there's a printout, or there's a whatever that is, and I'm sure there's more to it. which is probably nothing, but it's always fun to translate that. I'm sure somebody will translate it at some point if they've not done so already.
But it's cool that Andor has it, and it meant enough to him to where he kept it. And I think, again, this goes to your point of he has it now, and maybe it wasn't while he was in prison, but now he's experiencing all of these things. And when he goes back and revisits some of what Nemec was saying, it just galvanizes him even further. Potentially,
It's going to hit harder. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
If it didn't already.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's probably been thinking about this, and we'll talk more about it on Sunday. But
yeah,
it's that was kind of cool. That was unexpected.
And then the last scene, of course, is we get to Ferrix and the Amos, where Andor reaches out to Zan, tells him he's trying to tell him, "Hey, pass on, tell Marva I'm okay, tell her I'm thinking about her. She'd be proud of me," which was devastating to hear because we all know that Marva's now passed. And he finally tells him that his mom's dead. Asks him if everything's okay. And, he does a pretty good job of being stoic. I think he's in shock more than anything, though, really.
Sure.
I think all this is going to set in and kind of fuel him in a lot of different ways here. But poor Melshi, he's like, oh, man, all this space, fresh air. It's like a dream, right? And, casting has just been delivered, the worst news possible. We talked about this again on the last Patreon episode, too. It's just that feeling so hopeless about it now, right? That's going to creep in. Like, this was so unfair. Like, I could have been with her in her dying days, but I wasn't because of the oppression of the Empire and being wrongfully accused of something and being in prison, incarcerated, and what he went through there, the lives that were given up, all that's going to play into this. And so I think this is really going to put him in a bad position. To make no mistake about it, he's going there. And I want to ask you this too, because there was a moment I saw. I haven't really had a chance to look at some of the discourse about this scene, but I did see one particular comment that said, "Why would Andor allow him to just leave?" Like Melshi's like, he said it because we need to get the story out. And while I agree, yes, they need to somehow communicate this out and make the Empire or make everybody aware that the Empire is who they are. In the grand scheme of things, I don't know that it really matters that much. But the way I interpreted this particular scene was that Andor knew 100% he was going to have to go there to Ferrix, and the risk that's involved in returning back to Ferrix now, I think that's all clear. But I don't think he was going to push or fight Melshi to go with him. You know what I mean? Like, I think they were separating for very different reasons, and I don't think Andor was really telling him why he was okay with him going. Like, sure, go out and spread the word, spread the gospel, tell everybody it's horrible. But I've got my own destiny right now, and I've got to get back to Ferrix. And so, if we meet up again, cool. If not, that's fine too. But I think it was for different reasons that he left.
Exactly. And the other side of that it's the ambiguity, the questioning as the audience of, does this set him back, and he being Andor, set him back in this journey of being such a prominent force in the rebellion, even if it's more on this, maybe not extreme side, but the down and dirty need side of things. So does it pull him back from wanting to be involved, or does it galvanize him and say, well, no, I'm tired. Like we're going to hear, it sounds like it's more the latter. I'm tired of losing, but for them to part ways, I mean, like you said, I think Andor's in shock. He's probably like, yeah, sure, bro, do whatever you want. Like,
Right.
I got stuff to take care of anyway. I got to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing and how I'm going to do this but I don't care. But again, why letting him leave? I don't understand why that would cause any kind of, issues, really. He doesn't necessarily owe anything to Melshi in any kind of way. They seem to get along really well, and clearly they'll come back together at some point. But, I guess I don't understand I haven't seen the discourse, so I'm not sure exactly what the angle is here of what would upset folks, or they just wanted them to stay together and start, this is how we start forming our team. And we kind of speculated a little bit about that before, right? Well, oh, this is how they get together, and now they're a pair. But people drift and come back together in different ways. And this is Andor's show. He doesn't all of a sudden have a partner. If he were to all of a sudden have a partner, we would think it would be someone like Bix, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I think it was, the angle of, hey, they just came together. They are a team. They're stronger together than separate. Why does it make sense that he would let Melshi leave like that? It's just, more opportunity for him to get caught and killed, where together they're stronger, kind of thing. And right. Maybe because of what they just went through together too, right? They saved each other. We don't know how long or what all transpired after the prison break until they found the quad jumper and the fisherman. So I think it's all part of that, but I think it makes sense in the context of what's really happening here.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think with Andor as well, I mean, Melchi's kind of is starting to crack a little bit sometimes, right? When they're on the cliff, I mean, he's losing faith, right? He's tired. He's,
Hmm.
he's hurting.
He
He's
wanted to let
scared.
go.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he kept saying, I mean, he didn't want to, but he just didn't think he had it in him to continue on,
Right. Right.
and so from Andor's perspective, Andor's trying to do the things to keep him motivated and keep him going, which is really great character moments for Andor to be able to see him continuing to do that. And then of course, Mel, calm his mom, hey, just, that they're leaving. And Andor's like, I got you, buddy. And so it was really great to see those leadership moments develop. But again, yeah, the shock that he's in, he doesn't have anything invested. Melchi's kind of, I mean, he gets real excited and galvanized, but then he's also got these kind of weaker moments too. So Andor is probably just analyzing the situation in other ways as well. Of, okay, well, he's a bit of a liability too. So I'll just kind of adopt that for now while I'm processing everything else. I don't need somebody else's stuff in my head while I'm going through my own thing. And he's
Yep.
always
Yep.
been a bit of a loner, right? And so that those behaviors still come back. And that was what I was trying to say before, that those things get revisited and those things pull you back into. You want to retreat back into yourself or retreat back into older habits. Sometimes that happens, and so we'll have to see what he actually does if he allows himself to really fall into that trap. When it
Mhm.
seems like eventually we know that's not going to be the case, but he still has some growth to go through. So
Yeah.
we have to let that happen naturally. He can't just be a champion all of a sudden and say, no, we're better together. Everyone do this. No, he's still learning.
Yeah. He's got some bigger priorities to tend to right now. Anyways. Okay. Well, and that's how it ends. I mean, it ends unsettling really, because we get the images of him on the beach and, that
Right.
whole,
Yeah,
it was difficult to watch.
very reminiscent of Scarif, huh?
Yeah. I mean, he's out there looking I mean, my God, this guy and beaches, it's just like, stay away from them, dude. Like, this is the worst thing you could do.
Yeah. Of course, now you go back and watch Rogue One, and you're like, wow,
Oh,
he's recalling at least now.
yes.
But I like the way that they mirror each other, but they're not the same.
Yep.
When he last was in that situation, he was alone. There was no one. He was, we'll just say, pushing someone or letting someone else go away where he could have had a friend or something like that. But then with Jen Erso later on, he's gone on a completely different journey. He's thinking about that, but he's also got someone there at his side saying that we did this as a team. We did this in a very different way. And
Mhm.
recalling the last time he was in this type of, scenario or feeling, it was very, very different, and again, welcoming that inner peace, if you will.
Yeah. No, that's exactly how I interpreted. In this moment, he probably needs someone, and it's not Melshi. I mean, they're not going to hug on the beach, but he doesn't have anybody, and it's not like would never think to have anyone, even though he probably feels that way. And then when we get to Rogue One, of all the people, right, he has her, and he leans into that, and literally leans into that in a lot of different ways. So very, very
Right.
different, very powerful. I love this. And even just the sunset itself, it's almost like a carbon copy of exactly when the sun was setting, the clouds and the colorization that they used. And it was very cool. I really enjoyed that. But so yeah, that's how it ends. All roads lead to Ferrix. We'll get into a lot more of the speculation in terms of where we think this last episode is going to go when we get to the Patreon show. Not to plug that again, but Sunday night we'll be doing that 9 p.m. And then we'll also, I think there's only a couple scenes that we haven't seen yet. Like we did a show about midway through this season where we talked about all the shots that were shown in the trailers and TV clips that we were anticipating coming up in the last 6 episodes. And there's still a couple of them out there, but I think for the most part, everything's gone. Which is good. I mean, don't get me wrong. That means I'm sure they saved some of the best for last. So I have a feeling that we'll be surprised, but yeah, we'll hit more of that here in not too long from now.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I mean, 36-minute episode, and we went 2 hours and 13 minutes. So it's
Well, I mean, you were only here for about 45 minutes of it. So.
That's true. Yeah, I was out for a good 10, 15 minutes of that.
Digest. But who was here for the entire time was our amazing people tuning into the live stream here. Jonathan, Kathy, Lauren, Steph, Dale, Sky, Rob, Miss Sunflower, Derpy 501st, David Lozano, Katya, Susan Smith, David Rogers, Gary Smith, and we had a lot of people back in the background as well. thank you all for coming out. If you're listening to the show, certainly recommend coming out to the live stream when you get an opportunity as well. With Andor, we're usually doing these on Thursdays, but you can go check that out at cantinacast.com/YouTube. And you can hit the subscribe and the little notification bell, and you'll get notified anytime we schedule the show and go live, usually around 9 p.m. Central on those dates. But of course, when we do the Patreon episode, you can still get notified the same way. And that is open to everyone. So even if you are not a Patreon, you can watch the live stream. But once it's over and we get it processed, it all goes into the vault. And that link is only shared on the Patreon website. And if you are curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon, and see all of our offerings there. But thank you, everyone. Oh, and then there's Hard Counter sneaking in at the very end, just to make sure his name. Yeah, just to make sure he got his name there. He is stealing Rob's thunder, because that's usually what Rob is doing. Yeah. Oh, hi. I was lurking. Yes, you were lurking. Yes. I could see you back there, my friend.
I miss Hard Counter. I haven't seen him in a while. I'm glad he likes this show, because I know it's touch and go sometimes with Star Wars with him, but he seems to be on board with this one. So good for you, man. Good for you.
He loves us. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's really what it's about. So I slept with him in Chicago, or Los Angeles, or was it?
No, you're.
Oh, no, we slept in the same room. That's what it was. No, totally different.
No, you haven't met Hard Counter.
Oh, I have not.
You're thinking Dragon of the Abyss.
Oh, who's Hard Counter?
You're thinking John. Hard Counter's my buddy TJ out in.
Oh, well, no, I've not slept with that person, but I will get to you at some point, Hard Counter. Don't worry. All right, we'll edit all that out. No,
wow,
seriously,
this wasn't awkward at all.
No, not at all. Thank you. He just said, "Wait, we're sleeping together." Yeah, I'll reach out to you after the show. Let's get all this stuff.
Purely platonic, I'm sure. Yes. Wow, let's end this show. This has been interesting.
It's been terrible. Okay, so yeah, a couple more days here. We'll do the Patreon show live, and then just a programming note. Don't forget for the finale. We are going to be doing that on that Wednesday night because of the Thanksgiving holiday here in the U.S. So mark your calendars. I'm sure that'll be a, 4-hour show at least. So get a good night's rest, and we'll see you then for that. Any final words before we get out of here?
Nope. Good night, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay. We'll see you guys in just a few more days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.